inside the building.
Yep. Yep. Protected by something.
Was it in Winslow and was her name Patty?
Patty, you can shut off a camera, can't you? Don't you have that power over there at that desk?
Yeah, she got total control.
Going to mute Mr. Daly now.
Yes.
He deserves it today. Jay, did you get that email I sent you at 5:30 or thereabout?
Which one? Let me see. Is it the one where you said you were going to give me $1 million?
Yeah, that's the one.
Yes, I got the one that's lots of confusion.
Yeah.
I think I was more confused after the email. No, I'm just kidding. All right.
There are a few things in this agenda that are different from my recommendation.
Everyone, this is a regularly scheduled meeting of the Waterville City Council. There are agendas available online at the city's website. All items appearing on the consent agenda are voted on in one motion and vote. Generally, these items are routine in nature and do not require discussion. All items listed under unfinished business or new business are voted on separately. First, councilors will be given an opportunity for questions or comments. Once all councilors have had an opportunity to speak, citizens will be given an opportunity for comments or questions. Citizens must identify themselves. Each citizen will be allowed one opportunity to speak and will be limited to 3 minutes. Finally, councilors will be given another opportunity to speak or comment. Citizens who would like to speak on a topic that does not appear on tonight's agenda will have an opportunity to do so at the end of the meeting under public comments section of the agenda. All right. And now we're going to rise for the national anthem, and we're all going to look at Rick.
Gonna sing?
Gonna sing?
Nobody wants to hear me sing, Mayor.
Come on.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Play ball.
All right. Do I have any conflict of interest before we get started?
I have a conflict. I don't have the number right in front of me, but the Waterville Creates item.
Okay. So noted. Anybody else? All right. So let's get to. All right. Just manager's report.
I have several items to report to you on tonight. I'll be as quick as I can with them. First of all, on the Bill Grant project, they're going to start on Main Street in 2 weeks. This is very important because they're going to start at the south end of Main Street, move north, and they're going to do the Silver Street side first. You may recall that there's been a lot of discussion without resolution as to what state Silver Street will be left in at the end of this project. So that conversation has to be started up again and a decision made as quickly as possible in the event that it changes what happens on the reconstruction at the opening or the intersection of Silver Street and Main Street. So Mayor and Councilor Thomas, we should at least start that conversation anew so that we have something to present to the council at perhaps the very next meeting, which will be next Tuesday.
That's on the planning board agenda soon, isn't it, Steve?
I believe it is. Yeah. I haven't seen their agenda recently, but you did pass it over to them. I'll let Ann know tomorrow morning, the planning director, that this is happening quickly. The shooting range out on West River Road, work is starting up again, and they expect to be finished and operating by midsummer. At the Alphon Pond, it's scheduled to open on June 19. All work is on schedule, and they expect to meet that date. With the Stearns Building demo, as you can see, the building is no longer there, and the demo has gone without incident. In the Public Works arena, all the streets in the city are swept at this point. They'll be doing spot cleaning throughout the summer and fall. Roadside brush cutting is going on around the city, and it's very productive at this point. Traffic control markings are being painted. You'll notice that most of the crosswalks have already been painted. They were done first. The spring yard waste drop-off program at the Public Works facility ends on June 11. It's been very successful this year. Public Works has put out flowers in Castongway Square and in the downtown area over in the concourse. And they put up flags along Silver Street, all prior to Memorial Day. Pine Grove Cemetery and the Veterans Park were also dressed up prior to Memorial Day. code enforcement, and this is interesting because it ties in with our budget. Over the last 3 months, code enforcement has performed 339 inspections and issued 138 permits and violations. At the airport, there's going to be a car show next Saturday, June 5th. Try to attend. It's going to be a lot of fun. The solar project on the south end of the airport abutting Webb Road is scheduled to start construction in July, expecting to be finished by February next year. At the library, the renovation continues on schedule and the activity level is robust. The library staff is very excited about how successful they've been through this COVID period. With general assistance, finding permanent housing for the needy is still difficult, and it goes to the issue of a lack of housing in general in Waterville. And then finally, in the police department, the department needs Operation Hope golf sponsors. The golf tournament's going to take place in late September, but they do need sponsors for it. People should contact the chief of police on that. The bicycle officer that patrols the downtown is on duty as of this week, and that'll carry on through the summer and into the fall. And then finally, the moving or mobile radar boards that the police department has, and there are 3 of them, they're being positioned at various places and moving around town. That's what all our service departments are doing, and they're doing it very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Let's go to approval of consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
yes,
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, moving on to unfinished business.
I'd make a motion to take the entire agenda by title only.
I'll second that.
Yeah, Patty, roll call.
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
yes,
Council Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, let's move on to Order 111-2021.
An order providing for sale of property, Common Street.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion on this one?
Steve, is there anything new on this? No.
Nothing new. The owner, as I told you at the last meeting, has agreed to keep the awning clean. As you know, he's cleaned it up considerably from the condition it was in last summer, and he's agreed to maintain it that way. The sale would allow them to construct a concrete patio on that lot, but it doesn't allow for any vertical structures to be erected.
And no parking, right?
Correct.
Yeah. And I'm glad they got the awning clean. It looks much better than it did. Anybody else? All right, Patty, can I get a roll call, please?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak.
Yep.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
yes,
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Ordinance number 118-2021.
An ordinance providing for adoption of facial recognition ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any questions? Councilor Foss.
Let me speak. I'll speak to this just in that when we brought this back to Bill Lee, Bill and I talked about the terminology facial recognition instead of surveillance. defining that recognition, something that a human would recognize by certain criteria, which in a technology standpoint, if there is a picture taken of your face, it's recognizing you by your facial features, which is what this technology does. So really all we've done is replaced facial surveillance with facial recognition technology, along with a little bit of change to the exceptions and safe harbors, I believe, if I remember right. It's been a couple of weeks now. We feel that the way that this is written now allows the police department to continue to do what they do with cameras that they're catching photos from and getting to the bottom of what's going on, but also as it stands today, and
Anyone else? Steve Daly. Oh, sorry, Rebecca. Rebecca, every time you raise your hand, it sort of blends in with your jacket. And then all I see is because of the way my screen is, all I see is Rebecca Green.
Okay. I can,
Do you have like a white sheet of paper or
Put on a
something?
glove or something. You have a
how about this?
Yes, that is so much better. Thank you. I'm going to let Rebecca go, Steve, and then I'll let you go.
Sure.
I mean,
Go ahead, Councilor Green.
I just wanted to raise the question, and I did speak with Chief Massey today about this, but under Section 2, Part B, it says the City of Waterville and city officials may utilize the facial recognition systems of other entities, public or private, for the purpose of performing law enforcement functions. And I did have a constituent, sort of express extreme concern that about some private agencies that do this kind of work. So I just wanted to clarify that. And I'm wondering if we need to specify, I mean, in what case would a private entity be used by the police department?
Steve?
I can't think of one, and I don't believe that I don't recall Chief Massey wanting to use private entities for this purpose, because that the trial run that we did, or the investigation that the police department did into a private service that does this is what prompted this entire discussion. So
Bobby, he's here. Can we get him?
Yeah.
Right.
Bounce him in.
Patty, can we bring Chief Massey in to answer the question for Councilor Green?
Yes. Hi, Joe. Can you hear us? You're on mute. There he is.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
We can see you too.
As we discussed before, that we would be submitting our photos to other law enforcement agencies. Just so you know, that you're clear, that most agencies, particularly mid-sized, smaller agencies, use a private vendor for facial recognition. They come into a contract with them so that they can access their website, access their apps and their software. It is a considerable cost of resources to create your own database, and that's why the majority of police departments go to these vendors and enter into these contracts to access their databases. But we would go through another law enforcement agency that has that ability.
Go ahead, Councilor Green.
So, thank you for that clarification. I don't have an issue with that at all. I just, the way it's worded now is a little bit, doesn't exactly express what you just said. So it's a little open-ended.
Counselor, after Rebecca's not done. Go ahead, Counselor Green.
Just so, can we amend it to say, through public law enforcement avenues or something like that?
Agencies.
Agencies, thank you. I knew
I'd
not the
be
word.
okay with that.
Chief Massey, if we remove the private part from there, that just means that as a city, we can't enter into a private partnership, but that doesn't preclude you from being able to use an agency that does. Does that make sense?
That's correct.
So
Yes.
are you okay with that language?
Yes.
I mean, we worked hard on this. I want to make sure, again, my goal for this was a civil liberties issue. And I want to make sure that our citizens realize that they're not being passively recorded and stuff like that, which is what we all agreed on. Do you mind stripping the private out of there and leaving law enforcement?
Well, again, I'm always concerned when we close the door on technology that may help us solve serious crimes, especially violent crimes. Again, as I said, we owe that to the victim. We use private entities now. We use other private laboratories to do analysis. Law enforcement doesn't always have the resources and the tools to do those types of things because of the cost involved.
Yep.
So, you close that door completely. If there is no agency available for us to submit a photo to, law enforcement agency, it just completely slams that door shut and doesn't give that ability to solve a violent crime.
So how do we?
I would say that we will always, and we could, I guess, come up with some kind of language that would go to law enforcement agencies first. And I don't see why we couldn't do that, but I'm just trying to think in a case where we might have to use a private entity. It would eliminate that completely.
Councilor Green, what if we did something where Chief Massey would have to exhaust all legal agencies before going to a private entity? I mean, there are cases where we do send fingerprints to private things, samples to private organizations for cataloging and DNA testing. I'm not sure that this one's going to stop us, but I'm going to give you an opportunity to speak, then I'm going to go to Councillor Foss.
Well, how about adding, and this is based on our previous discussion, something like private, public or private, as approved by private with a contract with law enforcement agency. I mean, the idea is that these agencies would be vetted by, say, the state police or some other law enforcement entity, and not, off the internet, right? That's the whole point of this. I mean, I believe, I have faith in what our police department is doing is what we want them to do. I just want to make sure that this does reflect that.
I got it. Councillor Foss.
Chief, to Councillor Green's point, the private agencies that you use, how are they vetted? How do we know that it's not some internet blah blah blah? How do we? Is there criteria that's used to vet them? And the reason I'm asking is so that we can work with language in there to go to Councillor Green's concerns.
I wouldn't know the answer to that question, Council, because we have never obtained facial recognition from a private entity. I don't know how they're vetted, but as I said, we use private laboratories. We use public services often in our job. And we do that to the best of our ability, knowing these are reputable companies. But I think it goes back to the goal here was not to allow us, Waterville PD, to have facial recognition technology. We don't. We don't have it, and we won't have it.
And before we segued into that. I think we might have lost track with that. And Councilor Green, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. That's okay. The last statement there in section B is for the purpose of performing law enforcement functions. Meaning, to me, in my simple ways, there's a perp, for all intents and purposes of coming up with a better word for it, that Chief Massey and his team is trying to identify. And they're going to take that photo to one of those agencies and say, here, this is who we think did this, but we don't know who this person is. Can you find out who this person is for us? And Chief, chime in there, tell me that's not how that works, but because I do computers for a living.
How it works.
Okay. Does that help, Councilor Green? Because if it doesn't, I'm all in on figuring out what does.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about, clearly we're talking about ensuring that the Waterville Police does not have its own or use its own database for facial recognition. So I think that for that language, this does serve the purpose.
And if I could, I'll add this one last comment. Whenever we use this type of technology, whatever results or analysis we get will be used in a case or in a court. The district attorney and the courts want to know where we got that information. It's not like we can just discard it after and not use it. If we develop a suspect, if we submit some evidence that is analyzed and we get those results, we have to put that in report. So there's that added protection, because if the prosecutor's office or the courts don't feel that wherever we obtain that evidence or that information or that analysis is not from a reputable source, whether it's a person, a software, whatever it is, then we can't use it. If that helps give them that additional layer that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line here is we don't want this software to be, identifying people inaccurately. And at the moment, that is a risk with some of the software, especially from, less reputable companies. But I'm happy to cede the floor to others who want to comment.
Claude, I'll go to you in a second here. Rebecca, I have a question. Would it put you at ease, and Chief Massey, I'll need your input on this, if the private entity was used for specifically violent crimes? Like, obviously, we don't want to send people's facial recognition out for somebody who was shoplifting a pack of gum at the corner store, but if having a actual use or restriction on the use, if that would make it any easier for you.
Yeah, I mean, we have to balance privacy with catching, with catching criminals, especially, the most egregious violent crimes.
Which is really what I think this technology will be go for. Claude, then Eric Thomas.
Well, the chief has flagged the fundamental issue, which is it's one thing to make an arrest of somebody using facial recognition as a way to identify them. But when you get to court, the district attorney is going to have to show that there was probable cause. That's a requirement of the United States Constitution, the due process. So the police are constrained in everything they do by those rules. So having reputable sources for things like fingerprints or blood analysis, these are things that already exist. What we're adding now is facial recognition through the software. they could always look at pictures. I mean, we've everybody's seen the crime shows where the witness goes through a big book of pictures. So we're just moving the technology forward a little bit, and I really think that that the ordinance, the resolution that Jay has put forward is not all that serious a dent in the police's ability to do their job, or and in terms of protecting civil liberties, I think it's a good step, and this is a matter that is going to come back again and again as the technology develops. So I really, I'm willing to support your motion, Jay, and move on with the rest of the agenda tonight.
Thank you, Claude. Like I said, my goal in this was never to hamstring the police. I wanted to make sure that they were still able to do their investigative work and that our citizens were protected from being watched. I mean, that was really the big thing. Eric Thomas?
Yeah, I mean, my concern is not so much that the police take a photo of a perpetrator and then run it through a database to try to identify them. And I think most of the issues that have arisen with the wrong person being arrested involved sloppy police work after that fact, right? So they misidentified the person and then the police didn't do their due diligence. And so somebody ended up in jail for a while trying to prove that they weren't the person that they thought they were. So I think the real concern more is the follow-up police work. And, my concern was that all of a sudden they take all the traffic cameras, for example, and they're just constantly monitoring who's going through town. And I think that's mostly what people are worried about. Not so much worried about them using this technology to identify a perpetrator. And the biggest database that exists out there for this technology is anyone who has had their driver's license photo taken is in a digital database that they can use to match you against a photo of a perpetrator. So, the worry about us, we're not going to create our own database of a similar nature because it already exists out there, either people who have driver's license or people who've been previously arrested. So,
Councillor Foss?
As a matter of procedure, because this language changed from the last council meeting, I need to move this as amended.
Okay. Do I get a second on that?
Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call on the moving it as amended?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepat,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. So now we'll move it as amended.
Move as amended, please.
We did that. We're going to take a roll call. Anybody else have any other concerns before we go forth?
I just want to just clarification, Chief, as we get ready to vote on this is okay with you? Like this works for you? Like, is there anything that you want to change? I'd rather hear from you and say, well, you know what, this doesn't really, I'm like, we're going to accept it because that's what you guys are talking about. But like, if there's an opportunity that there's something that doesn't sit with, then I would rather hash it out now and make sure that you have everything that you need to be able to do whatever it is that you need to do. On the off chance that I ever need, somebody to help track down somebody for any type of violent crime. I want to make sure that, like the unintended consequences is going to be felt, as soon as we say, yeah, let's go ahead and just do this. And then, you know what I mean? So so that I'm good, if you could just say, yeah, Counselor, this is good. We can work with this. We can do no short of what we do currently, if not better, then great. I'm on board.
Bottom line for me is to be able to submit these photos to both law enforcement and private entities if we have to. That's the bottom line for me. And I go back to, I think the original intent here was not to have the police department possess the software, the technology. We're not doing that. There's fallibility in everything that we do, including DNA, including fingerprints, including photo enhancement. You can just go on and on. Either we use the technology that's supplied by other entities or we don't.
Which was the main goal. Like Eric said, we just want to make sure that nobody was being recorded at traffic cams and everything else. The investigative part of this, the police still need to be able to do. We want to track down violent criminals. We want to make sure that if somebody's missing an elderly parent, we can look for them. Other than that, we don't want to use the technology. Steve, and then I'm going to move it to a vote.
Just a point of information for everybody's understanding. There's a bill in the legislature now that would limit or prohibit the use of facial recognition software by all levels of law enforcement in the state of Maine. It seems to have bipartisan support. It is unlikely to be taken up or pass through in this session, but it's also unlikely to die in this session, so it could be carried forward into the next. If that is signed into law, it could warrant either an amendment to this ordinance or it might make it null and void.
Great. We're getting the state to pay attention. Look at what we're doing.
Yeah.
Follow suit.
The bill in the legislature was stimulated by the ordinance in Portland.
Yep, it's a lot more restrictive too.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Patty, I'm going to move this to a vote if nobody else has any comments.
Just to be clear, the first vote was voting on the amended language. Now we need to move ordinance as amended.
Yep.
And then we'll
Go ahead. We'll take a vote on that, Patty.
So I'll move the ordinance as amended.
Oh, okay.
I'll second it.
There
Thank
we
you.
go.
Okay. Thank you. Council Moore,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Council Klupak.
Yep.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to. Nope. So that was voted on. Are we all set, or do you need to take another vote?
Nope, that's it.
All right, done deal. Thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
Thank you, Chief.
Welcome.
Chief,
Order 121-2021.
An order providing for accept and appropriate grant funds for the Alphon Municipal Pool.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Patty, can I move to a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to new business. Resolution 124-2021.
A resolution providing for support for Waterville Creates.
Move to adopt. Eric can't second this one.
Second.
All right. Any discussion?
So I believe we have Shannon Haynes from Waterville Creates. She wants to speak to this. So
Yeah, let's bring her in so she can do her presentation before we talk.
Thank you. Hi, Shannon. Can you hear us okay?
I can, thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you. For those of you who don't know me, I'm the president and CEO of Waterville Creates. I assume that you received the materials that I submitted to Steve last week, so I'll try to keep this brief. I know you have a lot of other business to attend to. I wanted to start with a high-level overview of Waterville Creates and who we are. We were formed in 2014 to support and expand arts and cultural programming in Waterville. After careful analysis, in 2016, we merged with Common Street Arts, which we recently rebranded as Tyconic Gallery and Studios. And then we merged with the Waterville Opera House and the Maine Film Center in November of 2018. So what that means is that in a normal non-pandemic year, We offer year-round programming that includes live music concerts, community theater productions, and special events at the Waterville Opera House, daily film screenings at Railroad Square Cinema, the 10-day Maine International Film Festival, art exhibitions and educational opportunities at Taconic Gallery and Studios, and numerous free community events like Joy to the Ville and Arts in Bloom, Art in the Park. In 2019, our attendance was over 86,000. We suspended in-person programming in March 2020 in response to the pandemic. Thanks to our amazing staff, we were still able to stay visible and engage with the community through virtual and hybrid programs. But like many arts and cultural organizations across the country, we lost more than 90% of our earned income and 45% of our sponsorship revenue. Now that we see the light at the end of the tunnel, we're really excited to start welcoming patrons and staff back. We're starting with dance recitals at the Opera House this month, and then the film festival and Waterville Rocks next month. Art in the Park will start at the Farmers Market this month. So lots of exciting things coming up. In addition to bringing the community back together, which I think everyone is starving for, we're also really excited to support our area businesses by bringing people downtown. I think it's obvious that beyond the quality of life impact of our programming, we also generate significant economic impact for the city and the region. People who come to our events, shop in our stores, eat in our restaurants, stay in our hotels. So as we emerge from the pandemic and get back to the business of in-person programming, we really appreciate the opportunity to submit a proposal for city support. Specifically, we are asking for the city to sign on as an ambassador sponsor of our year-round programming at the $15,000 level, and as a lead sponsor of Waterville Rocks at the $10,000 level. In addition to the direct financial support, having the city as a partner is an important symbol for other sponsors and donors that the arts are important in Waterville to our cultural identity and our economy. It also will help to fill the gap of some of our corporate sponsors who simply can't come back to the level they were at before due to the pandemic. And that's especially important for Waterville Rocks, which is an entirely free event. As I'm sure you're aware, supporting the arts was one of the 4 strategies identified in the 2015 Downtown Revitalization Plan that was adopted by the city. And I just want to say that I'm proud to live in a city that recognizes and values the importance of the arts, both socially and economically. And I thank you for considering the request. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have or dig deeper into any of the materials that I sent you.
Any questions? Councilor Morris.
I don't have any questions. I mean, this is a great overview of exactly everything the Waterville Creates does, and I'm glad to have had it. So thank you very much for sending it. And I think that this is a great thing for us to absolutely get into, to go ahead and recreate that partnership and be those types of sponsors for these programmings to get people back to where they were this pre-pandemic. So yeah, I'm absolutely in favor of this. So
thank you, Councilor Morris. Anyone else? Shannon, thank you for presenting. I want to make sure that I got this right. Are you saying it's 15 for the sponsorship and 10 for the Waterville Rocks?
15 for the ambassador level sponsorship, which includes season sponsorship at the Opera House, sponsorship of the film festival, sponsorship of programs at Taconic. Waterville Rocks we handle separately because it has an entirely different budget that we have to raise every year in order to meet it. So yes, 15.
I'll be honest, Waterville Rocks is fantastic. I love going down. I love seeing all the people downtown in that park doing stuff. So we need more of that this coming year. Anyone else? Councilor Green.
So, first of all, thank you, Shannon, for the presentation. As you know, I'm a huge supporter, and anything supporting the arts and economic development is a win-win. And I'm really excited that you're coming back online, as it were. Just wondered, our budget proposal, I think, has $20,000 earmarked for Waterville Creates. So, but also I was just wondering what the if someone could tell me what our traditional support has been for Waterville Creates. It's my first year.
Originally we put 20,000 in for, it was 15,000, then 5,000 for Waterville Rocks. But we upped that to 10,000 for Waterville Rocks to make up the difference. And Shannon, do you have numbers on what we've given you before?
Yeah, the city has been a day sponsor of the film festival for as many years as I can remember at the $2,500 level. I believe $5,000 was earmarked last year for Waterville Rocks, but we didn't end up holding it. So those are the two major pieces of support that the city has provided financially.
And we haven't been sponsors before at that $15,000 level.
No, in fact, this is the first year that, well, last year was the first year that we put together these packages to bring on sponsors for our year-round package of programming. So we used to do everything a la carte, but it's much easier to just present once for everything that we do to both businesses and other partners. So.
I agree. It streamlines it, makes it look much better.
Right.
Councilor Green, any other questions?
I have no questions about supporting Waterville Creates in principle at all, and I think it's a great idea for the city to be a lead sponsor for Waterville Creates. As you said, Shannon, it shows that we support the arts and we support one of our greatest cultural institutions. So I don't have a problem with that. I think. There's more to say about the process of how we're doing this, but as for supporting Waterville Creates, I definitely am in support.
Councillor Klepak.
Well, yeah, I agree with everything that Councillor Green said. Obviously, Waterville Creates Waterville's lucky to have Waterville Creates. Lucky to have you, Shannon. I'm an enthusiastic supporter. I just was wondering why we're voting on this before the establishing the NGO committee, and if we were to establish the committee, would that screw up the timeline of being able to offer the support? Because I think it is important to be able to make sure that Waterville Creates gets our support for this season.
So,
go ahead, Mike.
I would say, in defense of that, listen, a lot of the things that we're looking to, that the Waterville Creates and Waterville Rocks is looking to do, we're 6 to 7 weeks out. I thought I saw the dates. So trying to get, materials printed up and getting the word out so that people can come down and do that, I think is kind of what's driving this. Putting this committee together and then having the meet, we're going to miss all of that. So I think, it's unfortunate, but the timing is really kind of critical as you plan events, especially events that are coming up within the next month and a half. So I think it's important that we, everybody says they show their support. Well, great, let's show the support and let's give them the money they're looking for, because I think we can do it, and I think it's for a good cause.
And for Councillor Green and Klepak, I agree that the committee we're going to establish in 2 items from now is really going to be the driver going forward. So that's where, and I've spoken to Councillor Green. She's going to willingly get on this committee. She's got the most experience of all the councillors when it comes to these things. I think it's important to lean on her for the knowledge that she does have, and she'll be able to help us create a sound process going forward. So I'm hopeful we can support this one and move it forward and just get it out of the way. This is the last such one you'll see before the NGO committee comes together. You won't see any more of these. Obviously, the NGO committee will be established hopefully by the end of the day. And we'll get some members on there that can do some of this work and create some of the process. because there are people waiting in line. So we'll have to get them to the committee. I'm just hopeful that, like Morris has said, that we're weeks away. If we wait till the budget comes out, that's about 4 weeks from now. We've already cut out more than half of their time to do the advertising for these events and book talent. So I'm hopeful that we can sort of move this one along. Shannon does a great job. I don't think they're going to spend our money willy-nilly. I think they're going to do fantastic things with it. I know they did during the beginning of the pandemic. I saw when the school was sending out lunch, they were sending out art supplies. So again, we want to support programs and organizations that have proven track records in our community of doing good deeds. And that's all I've got. Anyone else?
Exactly.
Seeing none. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yeah.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas. Oh, I'm sorry, Thomas is abstaining. Yes,
Yep.
I forgot. Thank you. The vote is 6 in favor and 0 opposed.
Don't give Eric more chance to speak. Whew. All right, we are moving on to budget review school FY 2022.
I can say we should have some announcements about bands for Waterville Rocks next week.
Yeah, so we can bring in Superintendent Haley.
And Joan, do we have?
Yep, Joan Phillips Sandy is the chair of the Board of Education. We could bring in Joan as well.
Trying to think of who else might be there. Let me see.
Marianne Bernier is another school board member.
Yeah, let's bring her in.
Is,
Yeah, I think that's all of them.
Paula Pooler is also
Paula, yeah. What about Paula?
business
Paula
manager
should be in there.
from the school
I
department.
didn't see her.
Paula Pooler.
And Paula as well. Yep. Okay.
We can't forget Paula.
No.
She's the money.
Right. The only one I want to talk to.
So Superintendent Haley, I think if you're ready, you're on, sir.
Well, thank you. First thing I want to say is I really appreciated the work that the city and the schools did jointly this year. It was a change from the normal hectic way that we went at budget. I thought it was a very collegial approach. And I'm one who gives credit where I think credit's due. I think Eric and Mayor Quello, you kind of led that charge to make sure that we were civil with each other and we listened to each other and tried to understand the financial needs of both the city and the schools, while at the same time maintaining this concern about this is a tough year to be raising taxes. So I'm proud of the budget that we've got. I sent you some information about it today, which I'll reiterate some of that. But the bottom line is, in a normal year, with a budget that's only up 1.29%, I would be ecstatic on that kind of work, given that we approved raises for teachers and other work groups that we have within the school and still kept it down to 1.29. The problem is that 1.29%, when you get to be a budget as large as ours, is an increase of the $332,233.43. And then if you look at the revenue page, which I sent out earlier, you can see that we lost revenues from state and local sources of $140,840.09. So if you combine that lost revenue with that increased expenditures, then you come up with the amount of money that we're asking for in city taxes, an increase over last year of $473,073.52.
Let's see. Anybody got questions currently for Eric? Eric?
Eric, can you just talk about how my understanding from our discussions is that the state looks back a year in terms of enrollment to determine funding. And because a lot of kids weren't in the school system because of the pandemic, our enrollment numbers were down, which affected the amount of funding coming from the state, which is part of what's creating the the hole in your budget this year?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that happened. You're exactly right, Eric. They used to take your average between your enrollment on October 1st and your enrollment on April 1st. They changed that a couple of years ago, I believe it was, and they now only take your October 1st. October 1st, we were severely down from our normal count because of people being frightened of COVID and either joining remote schooling, virtual schooling, or homeschooling so that they could stay away from close contact. As things started to get more realistic and people started to understand how to avoid the real dangers and the social distancing that we had, our April 1st count was back up to normal. So we know we're going to be up to normal next year, but it hurt us in the revenue this year. And a good example of that would be Educare. Educare, which is the organization that does the 4-year-old programming, and we get money to pass through to them. They typically run right around 100 Educare students a year. This year they had 50. They were only able to keep half their enrollment based on the social distancing. So they get hurt in this as well because the pass-through money that we give them was a lot less this year than it was in previous years.
Speaking of which, Eric, and I know that we've talked, and at the initial meeting, I had brought up the fact that the contribution that the city gives you is very different than what other municipalities do. However, Eric and we've been looking at your budget, and as I said, we want to support what you want to do. I am looking for you to hire the best teachers that we can possibly get because we are not currently doing that. I mean, I know we'd like to, but we end up losing teachers to other school districts because they pay more. One of the things I would like to see going forward, and only because, as you just mentioned, Educare is passed through. I believe that MMTC is also passed through.
Actually, MMTC gets its own allotment now. It used to be passed through, but it gets its own allotment now.
In the future, I just for transparency reasons for us to make it a little easier, is there a way to see the school budget with those two entities sort of off to the side and focus on what we have for Waterville itself, meaning the elementary school, the hall school, the junior high, the high school? And the reason I say that is when you combine those numbers, aside from Educare and MMTC, it shows us a different ratio as to what the city is providing for funding for the programs versus what we are overall. If you take Educare and MMTC, it almost looks like our budget is $3 million higher than it actually is, or 3 point something. Eric, do you have those numbers, Thomas?
I believe the technical center's budget is somewhere in the neighborhood of $2.4 million, Eric, is that correct?
Yes, what you're saying is almost right, Jay. We don't have any Educare expenses in our regular budget.
Okay.
So they run that through KVCAP.
Yep, I knew that.
So the tech center, you're right, that is included in ours, and we are the fiscal agent. They belong to Waterville. That's the way this organization developed the tech center. It's not a regional center. It is owned by Waterville. There is a governance board that rules it, and that consists of a superintendent and board person from each of the 4 sending communities. But yes, if you wanted to look at a budget, we could pull out that number and give you a spreadsheet that didn't include the tech center. We would have to include it with the state because we're the reporting agency.
Yep.
So state revenues have to be shown that way.
And I have no issue with that. I think for our purposes on the city side, if what I discussed originally is that I think that the city at some point should be funding closer to 40% of the budget. I don't want that 40% of another $3 million that doesn't really affect our budget sort of throws that off. I mean, 40%, that's 400, that's what, $1.2 million indifference.
I see exactly where you're coming from.
So that's really all I'd like to see going forward. I think I think it's just more about transparency. I understand that that's not that we don't get hit on that money. The average citizen does not. And again, it gives us, if our real intent is to push us towards a better share of what those expenses are so that we can get those good teachers, then I think it's important to do that going forward. And again, you can show it in the budget. We just like it. I can't talk for everybody else, but I know Eric and I have had these discussions where it would just make it a lot simpler for us to sort of see where we are as in that percentage going forward so that we can get there.
Yep, absolutely. Speaking of teachers, I talked to a teacher who resigned her position next year, going to a different school system next year. It's a $17,000 difference increase.
Ouch. Wow.
Certainly can't blame her for doing that.
No, I don't anyone for doing that. I think that we need to be more competitive in Waterville. And again, I think that if you look at some real estate websites, we don't always fare the best. And I know that we can do much better. Again, I've got 4 children in public school. They all do pretty good. We have a different situation at home where we get to spend more time with them.
We've got 5 kids. Are you getting one?
Homework questions right there.
Yeah, that's how it goes.
Yeah.
So, and that's really all I have. I appreciate the way that we were able to work this out this year. I'm glad that we weren't at each other. It was a lot more relaxed than we have in the past. And I hope that this continues going forward, that the school board and the city council and the finance department are able to collaborate much better going forward.
Well,
anybody else have?
Mayor Coelho, Paula Pooler has her hand raised.
I can't see it. Go ahead, Paula.
Thanks. One thing I want to say, Eric Thomas, I think you said something about the technical center budget. And Jay, when you asked about between the expenditures and the revenues for the technical center, on our summary expenditure sheet, you will see that we do have a cost center for the MMTC. And their budget for 21-22 is $2,294,000. And then you'll see on the revenue side, because we have to show it because we are getting a subsidy from the state, that they're offsetting that with $2,297,000. So we can do different scenarios for you, but I just wanted you to know those 2 things that were actually happening with the technical center.
I appreciate that. And like I said, Paula, our biggest concern, for at least for Eric and I, is when we look at the funding on the city side, that we are looking at the let's say the budget's $26 million, including MMTC. We want our percentage based on that $23 million.
Exactly. We'll do that.
And that's really all we're looking for going forward, so that it's more transparent for our residents.
Yeah.
So they don't always think that they're the ones ponying up the bill for all of it. They're going to see a $46 million budget in total, and they're going to think that they're paying all of it, and they're really not at the end of the day.
I agree.
Anyone else?
Councilor Thomas has his hand raised, Mayor.
Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I mean, just to echo Jay's point, I think it's really just, we certainly understand that in the budget. It's a matter of communicating with the public so that they understand. They just see the bottom line number. They see $26 million and they don't understand that, only 8.7, 8.9 is actual local property tax dollars. And when you lump the tech center budget being in our budget, I understand the mechanics of why it has to be, but it's almost like if that, you could put that budget in Winslow's budget too, and it would completely change the picture over there in people's minds, because they don't have the full understanding necessarily if they're not in these conversations about exactly how all those numbers work. And so it's really just a matter of communication moving forward with the public about, what's actually really within our school system, how we compare to other towns that don't have tech centers, for example, in terms of the percentage that we fund. And then I have a question. I know you had sent an email about this, Eric. The state is talking about possibly upping the school subsidy to 55%. Can you talk about what it's currently at, how much money the difference would be, and exactly what you would plan to do with that money if they do increase your funding? You're muted.
Okay,
There you go.
thank you. What Governor Mills has proposed is $180 million more in general purpose aid. That $180 million in addition, because the budget's already been voted on at the state level, will take legislative action. We're not sure when that will take place. We did hear that they may vote on it this week. I don't know what the update is on that. We will not know how much that means for Waterville until they actually do the 279, because as I was explaining to Steve last week, the way the essential programs and services funding model is, when they say they're paying 55% of education, they're going to get to 55% of education. They're talking about the total cost of education in the state. And then the way that's doled out is based on how wealthy or how poor you look in the eyes of the state. And that's all a factor of number of kids to be educated versus your valuation in your community. So it varies immensely, but Waterville has been notoriously, I say notoriously, good for us, close to the 70% receiver district with the current funding. So if that 180 comes in, what the board has talked about doing with that is increasing our expense side by that exact amount and using that exact amount to buy the teachers that we need to make smaller classes. And by making smaller classes, we think we can do it now, but if we get these extra teachers, we will guarantee you we're going to have all students in-person education next year. That's our goal.
Just a couple of points of clarification. When you say the state funds about 70% of education in Waterville, does that include the tech center?
It funds closer to 100% of the tech center.
Well, right, but to get that 70% number, if you're adding in 3 million that's fully funded by the state, that Jay and I are saying really should be,
yes,
to get the percentage of what they're funding that doesn't include the tech center or Educare.
Yeah.
I'd be interested in what that number is.
We could do that.
And then my other question is, in terms of a timeline for you guys taking the second vote on your budget, I believe you've taken one vote already. Is that correct?
We have taken the first vote.
Typically, you wait until after the city council approves the entire budget. I believe our plan at this point is to take a first vote at our next regular city council meeting, and then potentially a second vote at a special meeting the following week. Is that going to create any issues for you guys in trying to get it done, or?
It will if the legislature doesn't act in the next 2 weeks.
What will be the adverse effect for you if we vote? Let's say we have one more budget meeting next week, and then the following Tuesday would be our first council meeting.
I mean, we could potentially take a vote next week if people feel like they're ready. That's just a first vote, so there has to be a second vote anyway. But in order to move up the timeline, it might make sense to take a first vote next week. I think we're finishing up with all the city departments next week, right, Steve?
Correct. Yes.
So we'll have a Councilor Frankie.
Well, two things. First of all, if you'll recall, Eric, last year we postponed the budget for a month so we could finish up with all the pandemic issues. I don't see any reason why we might not be able to postpone for 2 weeks this year while we get all the loose ends tied up. Secondly, I would like to commend you, Superintendent Haley, as well as the school board. And while I'm at it, I might as well include all of the staff in the school department, teachers, on down the line. This has been an extremely difficult year for you folks, and I'm really want to commend you for the excellent work you've done to make sure that the kids could learn something at all in these circumstances. Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Claude.
the only thing I'll say about that is I don't want to postpone and take us into July because we will have to borrow money to continue operating. And that's not really something I would look forward to doing. Eric?
Well, I was just going to say we could potentially schedule a vote for next week. And then if after we have the rest of our budget discussion, if people don't feel comfortable taking a vote next week, then we could postpone to the next regularly scheduled council meeting and not be in any different a position than we are now. I mean, I don't know what new, really all we're waiting on at this point is to find out how much money we're getting out of all these other things that we're talking about. I mean, I don't think we're not in danger of losing revenues from the state. We're actually looking like we could get more revenues, and none of those revenues are currently built into our budget anyway. What they're going to be used for is to offset our own use of surplus potentially, or whatever the school might do with their additional money. So, you know, like I said, perhaps we could schedule a first reading of the budget, a first vote for next week, and then if people aren't comfortable after the discussion, then we could delay at that point. When is your next, what are your next upcoming scheduled meetings, Eric?
You want to know for the board?
Right. When are your regularly scheduled school board meetings?
14th and the 24th. We did schedule a special board meeting for next Monday, but that's not about budget.
Councillor Foss.
Councilor Thomas, you mentioned that extra monies. Could you explain that a little bit further? What those dollar amounts actually look like?
So we're still waiting. I believe the number we're working on for the CARES Act was 1.6 million. I've been in, that could possibly come through this month sometime. And then the state, on our side, they're looking at upping revenue sharing to 5%, and that would be retroactive back to January 1st of this year. A rough guess that we were working on is that could mean $400,000 in our current budget year and another $800,000 in next year's budget. And the discussions that we've had is to, like I said, first of all, we would offset our use of surplus with those funds, so that our surplus funds would just stay in the bank. And then the other thought is to actually create a budget stabilization fund outside of our rainy day fund. The budget stabilization fund would be used when we do a reval, because we expect that a lot of residential people, owners, are going to see a significant bump because of what's happening with housing values in Waterville. And so if we can bank the additional revenue sharing money that may be coming in, and depending on the flexibility with the CARES Act money, if we could bank that and use it to keep the mill rate down when we do a reval, I think would be the wisest use of that money. But currently none of that money is factored into this budget because we weren't clear on what any of that was when we put the budget together. So I expect our budget picture is only going to improve. It's not going to get worse.
I got one more thing.
Go ahead.
Mr. Haley, out of the CARES Act or any COVID related money, what do you guys anticipate possibly getting from the state or the Fed?
I've got a printout on that has all the accurate numbers. And
I would absolutely love seeing that.
Yeah, the board asked for that, and it's very informative, Rick. So I'll make sure to send you a copy of it. I'll send it to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Rick, to touch on that, we have talked about a stabilization fund. I think currently we're supposed to hold 12% for an emergency fund. I think that having a stabilization fund, or what we call a rainy day fund, of an additional 8%, so that we always have 20% of what we have to operate on sitting in the bank. And that will stop the, in theory, it should stop us from having to go up 0.25 one year, 0.5 the next year, dropping down. It really is about keeping taxes stable for the foreseeable future for residents. Eric touched on the fact that we're going to have to do a reevaluation here in the next year or two. And residential properties have climbed about 20 to 25% over the last couple of years, whereas commercial property has not come up at the same rate. So where residents, some residents, and from what I've seen and talking to the assessor's office, on average, 1/3 of the population goes up, 1/3 of the population goes down, and 1/3 of the population essentially stays the same. I think that when you guys decide to do a reevaluation, the hardest hit neighborhood is more than likely going to be the South End. But they're also the ones who went down during the last reevaluation. So again, being able to stabilize our taxes, we had none of this CARES Act money in it because we didn't know what it was going to be. And we can't use any of it to essentially reduce our budget anyway. We can use it for emergency services. We can use it for specific items. And I feel that when that money comes in, any money that you've used in this budget that fits that bill, you can reimburse yourself for. And again, that will help create that sort of stabilization fund going forward, so that we're not going to fall victim to the up and down, up and down, up and down in the mill rate. I'm hopeful that during the reevaluation, you're going to be able to drop that mill rate a little bit. And in order to keep it so that we don't have to jack up people's taxes, you sort of need that stabilization fund to keep them even after that reevaluation. And I think for the school, same thing. They can't use that CARES Act money to reduce their budget to save taxes. Am I right in that, Paula?
You are.
Paula's shaking her head yes. So I'm hopeful that the things that we've done in this budget will work for us. Like I said, it's going to be a zero increase, and you have all that extra money coming afterwards that we did not use in this budget that is going to help future budgets going forward. But that's all I have. And Eric, I am, as a parent with 4 children at home, I fully expect that they're all going to go to school next year, day in and day out. So if you can make that happen from one concerned parent to a lot of others, trust me, I get those phone calls. Please, 5 days a week. We would like 5 days a week.
So does my board. We'll make it happen, Jay.
I appreciate that. Anyone else? I see Paula, Rebecca Green, and Joan Phillips Sandy. So I will go Rebecca Green, Paula, and Joan.
I was just pointing to Paula.
Oh, thank you. See, you just pointed to a different, you pointed to participants on mine.
Okay.
Go ahead, Paula.
Thanks. One of the things I want to say, and I get 2 Erics here, so Eric Thomas for this one. The reason why we do plan on using additional subsidy that we get from the local, state subsidy for local, in the budget for 21-22, so that we can get more teachers on board to open up schools fully in the fall. So that's why if you took a vote on a budget right now, that dollar figure wouldn't be accurate, even though the bottom line will remain the same, because we'll increase our budget, but we'll offset it with the exact revenue dollar for dollar that we get in additional subsidy. But we have to report to the state our budget by the 11 categories, and it wouldn't be the 26,044,000. It would be the higher number.
So you're really waiting on the state, is what you're saying?
100%. That's what our issue is, because we would like to increase our money for 21-22 so we can be absolutely positive we can get the teachers in and open school fully.
And are you hopeful that the state is going to make a decision before your meeting on the 24th, or do you think you might have to have a special meeting after they finish their business? I think they're set to adjourn like the 17th, aren't they?
Yes, and I know that I've been talking to them a lot actually, and I know that they really would like to get the additional subsidy statewide settled as soon as they can. So hopefully we'll know pretty quickly. But it's hard for us. I mean, you could take the first vote because you also have a second and third vote, but we do plan on increasing our budget by that much money and offsetting it on the revenue side. So it would change us.
And would there be any issue with you taking a second vote before we take a final vote, as long as you know we're not going to be asking you to change anything?
Yeah, it would. We have to wait for you to take your final vote before we can put a final second on it.
So I would assume we're not going to take a final vote until maybe at the earliest the 22nd, because we have a special meeting. So it seems like that would work with your timeline anyway.
Yes.
No.
Go ahead, Joan.
Yeah. If the legislature is done on the 17th, our next meeting after them is the 24th. So that's when we could talk about putting that money in, but it would you'd have to meet after we knew that and set it finally before we could set it finally. Does that make sense?
So we'd have to potentially have a special meeting on the 29th or whatever that last Tuesday in June.
Well, you know,
well, that depends when the state. That depends when the state decides that number.
Right. I mean, the important thing is we can't have our final numbers until two things happen. One is the state tells us how much, if any, they're giving us. And the second is the city tells us exactly what they're giving us. That is, you have a vote. So you have to vote before we can have our final vote. But we'd rather you didn't do it until we have our final numbers. Does that make sense?
Right, but if you have numbers from the state by the 17th, because that's when they're supposed to adjourn, then we could vote on the 22nd. And then your meeting is not until the 24th. And so you have a regular scheduled meeting on the 24th, is that correct?
Correct.
Right. That's true, assuming that somehow the entire board, and I think they will be, because we all agreed in principle at the last meeting that if we got any extra money, we'd use it to buy teachers so that we could guarantee having everybody back in school. But that's an internal thing I think Eric and Paula and the board can probably figure out how to work out. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, that might do it. I just hope, I hope the legislature comes through in a timely fashion. I always hope the legislature comes through in a timely fashion.
Councilor Green.
So if I understand correctly, the amount that the schools are asking for from the city is not going to change based on what the legislature does.
You're absolutely correct.
That is correct.
So what is to prevent us from taking that vote before the legislature decides?
Because we don't know what our total budget figure would be, and you'd probably be voting on the 26,044,000 as our total budget, which we really would need to change our budget side and our expenditure side. So those numbers would be different.
Right. We have to approve whatever their final budget number is, whether it means they're asking us for more money or not.
Right.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
So what does that do to us if they can't get it to us before the end of June?
I think that they're going to do everything humanly possible to make sure that doesn't happen.
Okay, and Paul, the only reason I say that is because, as I've said before, I don't want to borrow money to do the job that we're supposed to be doing on a city level.
You won't have to.
When we're already there. What was that, Steve?
You won't have to borrow money.
Right.
We'll be okay?
We don't send tax bills out until October anyway.
Right.
Because in previous years, we've had to borrow in order to continue after June.
No, we just had to pass like a continuing resolution. So basically we operate on the previous year's budget until the next year's budget is
okay. I'm good with that. Then.
That's what we did last year.
All right. I was just nervous that we were gonna have to borrow in order to do it, and that would not have been okay with me.
We just have to make sure we're liquid, Jay. So we need to make sure that we have enough money on hand to pay our bills.
Okay.
We're good.
Anyone else got questions for the school board? Seeing none, I'm going to let you guys go. Eric? Go ahead.
I would just be clear that if anybody has issues they want to raise, now is the time so that they can go back and work on whatever issue people may have.
Joan?
Yeah, I would just like to say thank you to you, Jay, and to the council members who are on the finance committee. This year was very different than other years. It was much better being collaborative, and I very much appreciate it.
No. Thank you for that, Joan. And I actually have one more question. Eric, these teachers you're going to hire, is it for a 1-year contract? Because are you not going to need them the following year?
Our plan is at least 2 years, but new teachers are on 1-year contract anyway.
Okay.
Called a probationary contract. And then the second year is a probationary contract where you don't need just cause to let them go. And you can have a reduction in force, which allows you to let some of them go if after 2 years they're either not meeting the credentials or we don't need them anymore.
All right. And I'll just say it now because we're in a public meeting. If you believe you are a top tier teacher and you have something to offer to Waterville, please apply. Short of that, Eric, go ahead.
I was just going to say,
I'm sorry, Thomas.
I just got a message from Bruce White saying they're hoping to adjourn June 16th. So.
All right. Councillor Klepak.
This is a pretty small thing, but I was just wondering why the English language learners budget jumped this year here in this budget.
Yeah, it's pretty obvious. It sticks out there, doesn't it, Tom?
Yeah.
Yeah, we had to hire a second teacher. We have one teacher, but it's mandated on what the caseload can be, and our caseload is going to double next year. So we had to hire a second teacher.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Yeah.
Anyone else? All right. Eric, Joan, Paula, Marianne, thank you for showing up. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Waterville Schools.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Go purple. We like our Panthers.
Go purple is right.
All right. Everybody have a good night. Well, except for you counselors. You got to stay with me.
I'd like to make a motion.
Yeah, you can't. All right. Let's move on to Resolution 125, 2021.
A resolution providing for establishing a community service organizations support committee.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any conversation? Steve.
I want to ask if everyone has read the draft committee charge.
I did.
It is a draft, and it is subject to editing even after this vote occurs.
Councilor Green.
Yeah. So I just want to say that I did read it, and it looked a lot more involved than I think what we really need here. As I've expressed, I'm disappointed that we kind of we have the cart behind the horse here a little bit. However, it's a good step forward in creating a more coherent process for next year. But I just question some of the action steps in the purpose, and whether we can't streamline this a little bit.
That's why it's a draft.
Yeah. Okay. So, for instance, I think under purpose, the first bullet point pretty much does the trick. I don't think that we need a committee to consider the return on city investment for services. I mean, I think that's for the nonprofits to make a case to us. And I don't know about inventorying all the public service organizations in Waterville. I mean, that's a lot of work. I'm not sure what the purpose of that would be, but I'd like to hear what other folks think about that. That's just my opinion.
I agree that the first bullet point pretty much says it all. I think that as time goes on, like Steve said, this is just a draft that he put together. I think as the committee meets, they should go through that draft and sort of pick out whatever they don't want and give it back, so that we have a better mission statement going forward. And you're right. We've never had this process. I've looked back and I can't remember a time, even before when NGOs would come to the city asking for money back in the 90s, there was no process.
Which usually means that, so I'm sorry to interrupt, which usually
go ahead.
You don't give out any money, right? So, but if you're going to give money, you should do it.
So, and I am in favor. Again, it's part of originally getting those organizations to come and ask for money was to start the conversation, because it hadn't been going on before. And I did approach those organizations right away, and I approached others, and a lot of them are waiting for this to come forward. And hopefully once this is established, they'll have, as the city gets inquiries, we'll be able to pass them off to this committee to vet that process going forward, so that we don't run into this sort of bump in the road like we did this year. I just know that I don't want to be on the committee, so it's gonna have to have at least a couple counselors, and I don't want on the committee because there'll be forever where I am looking for active partners that provide services to our residents, and I don't want to look like I'm being partial. So if I have no control over it, that doesn't come back. Anyone else? All right, seeing none. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to resolution 126, 2021.
A resolution providing for establishing a transportation committee.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Unlike the previous one, I absolutely want to be on this committee. So I'm hoping you guys will see it in your hearts to get me on there. I mean, I'm going to put my name up anyway, regardless, but let's see. Any questions on this committee? So I Klepak, I hope to see you on this committee with me. This is one that I think is right up your alley. That we will be studying all sorts of things like trains and buses, talking to other communities to form some sort of partnership to have a regional service that will get people up to Skowhegan, back and forth, down to Augusta. I think it's important. I've also reached out to Bill will be willing to serve on this committee also. So when we start talking about buses, we'll sort of have that backbone behind us. And that's pretty much it. Anyone else? All right. Seeing them, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Councilor Oliveira,
Yes.
Councilor Klepak,
Yes.
Councilor Green,
Yes.
Councilor Foss,
Yes.
Councilor Frankie,
Yes.
Councilor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Resolution 127, 2021.
A resolution providing for authorizing the city manager and city council chair to execute a contract with Nicholson and Associates for the FY21 annual audit.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Olivera,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yes.
Counselor Green,
Yes.
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to resolution 128, 2021.
A resolution providing for authorization for sale of city property, Lot 30, Map 78.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Which property is it? Oh, go ahead, Steve.
This property is the last lot on the right, headed up the hill on Upper Main Street just before you get into Fairfield. It's a vacant lot. It was split off from the house lot next to it that was built on, and now the abutter, the owner of that house, wants to buy the property. The city's ordinance that addresses the sale of city property allows for a direct negotiation with an abutter without putting it out to public bid or any other kind of competitive process, provided that the sale price is at least the market value of the property.
Yeah, and I would just say in our experience, it's better, better to sell the property to the abutter because obviously they already have a vested interest in taking care of it. We've had much better experience with that than properties we've sold to people who are just speculating on real estate.
Counselor Klepak.
Has the abutter described their purpose? Is it they just want to secure the property, or are they planning some sort of construction, or what are they planning to do there?
They are not planning construction, nor have they indicated that they intend to sell it for as a building lot, which it is. They are looking to buffer themselves from development that is planned for the parcel beyond that in Fairfield.
I see.
Anyone else? Seeing none. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Counselor Morris,
Yes.
Counselor Olivera,
Yes.
Counselor Klepak,
Yes.
Counselor Green,
Yes.
Counselor Foss,
Yes.
Counselor Frankie,
Yes.
Counselor Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Okay, moving on to resolution 129, 2021.
A resolution providing for bid award airport mowing equipment.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any questions? Claude.
This is coming out of the bond that we passed last year for the airport. Is that correct?
That's correct. Almost the entire amount. $43,000 is going to come from a general fund pass-through of FAA grant funds, and then the remaining $2,675 will come right from the general fund.
Any other questions? Counselor Green.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is this an expense that was in the budget?
It's part of the bond.
Okay. So, but the bid was more than what the bond would cover? Is that?
Yes, that's correct. I've spoken with the airport manager about this set of equipment, and I've seen what it's going to replace, and what it is replacing is in dire need of replacement.
What's the difference, Steve?
Pardon me?
What is the difference in what we approved for the bond and what we're going to pay?
It is the balance in the bond is $156,700. So the difference is $45,675.
How much is the pass-through?
43,000.
43. Okay, so 2,000. Okay.
Okay.
Now, will were we counting on this pass through as part of this? Is that always the intention of the pass through?
No, the pass-through was COVID-related grant funding that is available for this purpose. And because of the cost of the total package, we decided to apply it to this purchase.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to find out, so if we didn't get any of this pass-through money, this COVID money, the ask to this council today would have been for 45,000 and not 2,300. Correct. Out of this total fund, right? So, correct. I guess I'm trying to understand. Is he on, like Randy on here? Like, how do these things happen? Like, how do we, I don't know. We had a budget meeting with him last week, and we had a bunch of issues with, he's being very frugal and things like that. I'm like, these are the types of things like we can't have. You know what I mean? We can't have someone play the line this tight and just be like, well, I only asked for this because that's what I thought, and it wasn't enough, and now we've got to take from something else because somebody didn't plan properly. You know what I mean? So this is just yet another thing. I think there was another issue with potentially where we're going to get some grant. We were sold a bill of goods on this, that we're going to get this grant, and now it's, well, that's highly unlikely. Like, this is just a series of events that we're starting to see at the airport, and I'm wondering a lot of things right now. So
Mike,
I'm going to remain silent.
Randy, I'm going to let you respond. Then I'm going to go to Councilor Frankie.
Thank you.
Let me jump in, Mike, and let you know
Please.
That what you're assuming there is not at all what happened.
Okay, great. Then I'm glad you're here.
The bond money that we were allocated was actually for the snow blower.
Okay.
That money or that project came in significantly under budget. Secondly, 100,000 of that 157,000, I think that Steve just mentioned, 100,000 of that came or is actually the money that was allocated for the taxiway project. We don't have to come up with a local share anymore because that's 100% funded by the FAA. So that freed up $100,000 of bond money that was going to another project.
Okay.
I met with Steve and I said, listen, I would like to take this bond money that we have left, 157,000, and apply it to new equipment. And I showed him all the equipment that we had, and I said, this is all leftover, outdated, retired equipment that we've received from Public Works or government sources. We don't actually own or have bought a single piece of mowing equipment at the airport on our own. It's all been secondhand, used stuff that was retired for a reason. For the mowing deck that we bought 5 years ago for the airport, or that we got 5 years ago for the airport, it's cost me $8,000 in the last 8 years just to maintain the mowing deck. It's not sustainable. It spends half of the time down going through maintenance as opposed to mowing. So when we discussed it, we said, listen, these are the things that we need. If I was to replace every piece of equipment, this is what we'd be looking at. And I strategically went through and sourced the equipment that we needed to replace everything we own, and it just coincidentally happened to come in at almost the same amount we were receiving from the FAA as payroll reimbursement from them. Now, the $2,000 that we were talking difference will likely not be a need at all. The resolution says not to exceed 45,000. I'm still awaiting a trade-in value on one of the pieces of equipment that I expect to get anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 for. So, in fact, no new money will be needed from the city.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Randy. I appreciate that. That makes me happier. Thank you.
I thank you too.
Claude.
So as I understand, Randy, we're coming down to the end of this budget year, and you've seen an opportunity to grab a couple of pieces of equipment that you will not be requesting in next year's budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
So this is a funny time of year. We got next year's budget. We got this year's budget finishing up. It's hard to see all the moving pieces, but it looks to me like this is actually a pretty good deal for us, Randy.
I completely agree. Between last year acquiring the snow blower with the wheeler loader and this resolution for mowing equipment, the airport will be in excellent shape in terms of equipment need. And I suspect that by doing this, we will be good for the foreseeable future. At least in the next, I would say, 5 to 10 years in any equipment need.
Definitely like that number, 5 to 8 years. I'll be gone by then, but I'd still like to.
I'll still be here.
Anyone else have questions for Randy or on this issue? Councilor Green.
Thank you. Could you explain? I'm not sure what the pass-through money refers to. Could you explain that?
Sure. Essentially, we were, and this is later in the council agenda as well, for a second acceptance of FAA grant money. Essentially, we were awarded $30,000 last year through CARES Act 1 and $13,000 through CARES Act 2. There are certain restrictions and requirements with the funding. We are, for simplicity's sake, for transparency, we're applying that towards payroll and reimbursing the city for payroll. That goes back into the general fund. Then the city can allocate that funding towards something else. Like I said, it coincidentally comes in around the same amount of what we need to replace all of our mowing equipment, which we have almost 400 acres of mowing that we need.
Okay, I was just missing that first 30,000. I knew about the 13, but yes, that explains it. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Seeing none, Patty, can I move to a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, moving down to order 130, 2021.
An order providing for authorizing an expenditure for downtown traffic barriers.
Move to adopt.
Second.
And this is in response to the planters that we're putting in around the businesses, Steve?
That's correct.
Okay.
I would ask for one amendment, though. Instead of referring to the downtown TIF, would you amend it to refer to the city center TIF?
So moved.
Second.
Can I get a roll call on that amendment, Patty?
Yeah. Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Oliveira,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yeah.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Move as amended.
Second.
Any further discussion? Councilor Frankie.
I just wondered if there's been any discussion with the merchants who are benefiting from these fancy planters to see if they would like to help with the cost.
We've talked to them in advance of making this proposal to acquire these units. And we didn't ask them to contribute to the cost of them, but they've almost to the merchant agreed to put the plantings in the units and to maintain the plantings throughout the season and to do that annually.
Councilor Thomas.
Well, and I would also point out that in all likelihood, given, we got the build grant continuing next year, then we're going to have a redesign at the concourse. I think we're going to have other places where we're going to have uses for these in the coming years. So they likely will end up being used by multiple businesses, which may not be the ones that are benefiting from them this year.
And Claude, hopefully in the future, when we get to close off that part of Silver Street there and extend that sidewalk, and all of those merchants that want to use it start paying a fee to use it, we'll be able to recover some of that money for these planners. Councilor Green. Nope. Okay. I'm like vigilant. I'm watching for the hand. You usually blend in. When you lift your left hand, I can see you. The right hand messes me up. It blends right in. Anyone else? All right, seeing none, Patty, can I move to roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you, everyone.
And I probably should have said this before the meeting, but did we check Councilor Klepak's credentials? Because I think he's got a stand-in. Ever since he shaved the beard, it's just different. Order 131, 2021.
Do we have any facial recognition software, Jay?
Not allowed to use it. Klepak's safe.
An order providing for acceptance of FAA Airport Improvement Program grant and issuance of notice to proceed.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion? Steve Daly.
Just for the benefit of the public, this is the grant that will fund the reconstruction of Taxiway A, which has been ordered by the FAA. And the airport manager tells us that it will not diminish the ability of the airport to handle medium-sized aircraft. The grant amount is $4,635,300. It will cover 100% of the cost.
Our airport is getting some upgrades.
Wow.
And the federal government is flipping the bill. Thank you, federal government. Anyone else? Seeing none, Patty, can I move to roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right, moving on to order 132, 2021.
An order providing for acceptance of a grant for airport operations 3-23-004-7-028-2021.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Steve, you want to talk about this one too?
Well, first of all, I want to apologize for the reference number. We had to do that because we had 3 of them floating around at the same time, and this is the only way we could tell one from the other. I think Randy can better explain this one. I've lost track of it.
Can we bring Randy back in, Patty?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Haha, Randy, you thought you were done.
You are so close.
Randy, can you explain this one to us?
So essentially, we had the first CARES Act grant. That was the $30,000 one. Then the legislature met again. They came out with CARES Act 2. The amount is basically determined by the type of airport you are, the amount of operations you have, so forth. So us with along with, probably 10 other airports in the state of Maine got this amount. Other airports got more, some got less. So again, same as before, certain restrictions. We're going to apply this particular grant to payroll again, reimburse the general fund, make it seamless and transparent. And yeah.
Any questions for Randy or any comments?
Council Olivera has her hand up.
Oh, I don't see. Oh, go ahead, Flavia. I didn't see.
I just, maybe I missed it, but I didn't get the amount. How much?
13,000.
13, okay.
Do you have a follow up, Councilor Olivera?
Oh, no, so 13 was for CARE Act 2, and then the 30 was for the CARE Act 1?
Yep.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Anyone else? Seeing none, Patty, can I move to a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Ordinance 133, 2021.
An ordinance providing for amending Table 1 of the Building and Electrical Permit Ordinance.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Steve, can you give us a quick rundown? Oh, go ahead, Claude. I'll let Claude go first.
Well, the chart that you sent out was totally bewildering, Steve. Does this just make us up to date 21st century?
Yes, and there's a little bit more to it. The last time that the fees were adjusted was 2003, and this will increase the fees by 89%, just to be compatible or up to date, as you say.
I bet that 89% will help hire that second person.
It will, but if you think about it, imagine how much money's been left on the table over the last 17 years.
Since I've been on the council, I've been watching how much money's been left on the table for the last 20 years.
Well, all I know is that I got my electrical work done just in time.
Retroactive to your project, Claude.
Yeah, we're not. It's back to January, so you're in trouble now. Any other questions? Seeing none, Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, moving to Ordinance 134, 2021.
An ordinance providing for amending the Animal Control Ordinance.
Believe we are motioning to table this. Am I correct?
Well, before we jump into that, I would be interested to hear what comments from some of the other councilors might be. I had planned to sort of kind of circulate this and
then I'll make a motion.
Get some input from everyone, and I think right now is as good a time as any. If anybody has concerns, I'd be happy to hear them.
I'll make a motion to adopt for the sake of hearing that.
Second.
And Claude, we've had our discussions on this, and actually I got to talk to Councilor Green a little bit today. I don't see an issue with moving to a fourth dog. I mean, we allow 6 chickens, 4 dogs. We're gonna be all singing Old MacDonald here soon, but I think that 4 dogs within the city itself makes sense. And as I've said before, I think out in rural Waterville, where it's rural residential, anywhere between 8 to 10 dogs. I mean, they're out in the countryside. People should have room to let the dogs float around. My biggest concern is anyone over that 8 to 10 dog limit. They're either a puppy mill or a kennel. And I think at that point, either entity should have to come to the city and request a permit and pay a fee in order to do that. Other than that, I really don't have any serious issues. I don't think a lot of landlords are going to allow 4 dogs at a time in their apartments. And the last thing I want to see is 16 dogs in a 5,000 square foot area because there's 4 apartments in a building. But 4 just makes sense to me. Good, Rick.
I'm echoing what the mayor just said. Simple as that.
Somebody chart that down. Anyone else?
I agree with Councilor Frankie from time to time, particularly during budget season. But
Councilor Flavia and then Klepak.
All right, my question is okay. I do agree with the 4 dogs, but does size matter? Like the size of the dog? Because imagine you have 4 little dogs versus having 4 big dogs.
I think, in my personal opinion, I believe that 4 big dogs are a lot easier to control than 4 little yappers. But that's just me. Councilor Foss and then Klepak.
I can speak to that from where I live, Councilor Rivera. The landlord here started out with little dogs under 40 pounds. And now we've got Great Danes running around here. It's just a progression of time. It was a very short amount of time that we went from under 40 pounds to whatever. There are tenants here that have 3 and 4 3 dogs that I've seen in all varying degrees of size. I don't see putting a restriction on the size of the dog as helping or hindering the situation.
Okay.
Councilor Klepak?
Are we fixing a problem that exists?
Technically, yes. We have one constituent in Claude's district ward that their landlord has allowed them to have 4 dogs, and when they went to register the 4 dogs, they were told that they could only have 3. So short of letting somebody get rid of a family pet, that's probably more like a family member. I think that we can try to make some sort of accommodation. 3 back then was probably pretty arbitrary to begin with. But short of that, I don't really have an answer for you. Councilor Thomas. Oh, go ahead, Claude.
That's what, when my constituent asked me, I went and looked at the ordinance, and there didn't seem to be any underlying reason for there to be a numerical limit. So I looked at some of the other surrounding jurisdictions. Bangor has a limit, but Augusta doesn't. Some of the other towns around here don't. And it just seemed to me that the real issue was nuisance. 1 dog could be a nuisance if it's barking and howling all the time, but you could have 8 or 10 dogs who are very well mannered and not have any problem at all. In terms of size, Flavia, I had friends years ago, and this is show my age. This is back in the 70s. Had a 1-bedroom apartment with no furniture, just couches on the floor, or just cushions on the floor. They had 2 Great Danes and a Greyhound living with them. And, there was never any problem. They were very well-mannered dogs. So that's the reason that I said, look, the number seems to be arbitrary. Let's focus on nuisance, but I'm perfectly willing to put in some numerical restrictions, maybe based on the acreage in the rural residentials and a number. What I'm trying to do is come up with something reasonable and at the same time address the concern of my particular constituent.
Councilor Thomas?
I just was going to say that Chief Massey had his hand up. I don't know if he looks like he took it down, so I don't know if he still has something to say.
Patty, can we pull in Chief Massey?
Yes. Joe, did you have something you wanted to add to that, Chief Massey?
I did. I'm sorry. For some reason, I got kicked out of there. Just a couple of concerns I'd like to share with the council when we talk about the number of dogs, and that's safety and health. You know, I'm concerned that when we have multifamily units in a case where there's 3 or 4 apartments in one building, if you have 3 or 4 dogs in that particular building, in each apartment, that's a significant amount of animals. Now, worry about not all dog owners are responsible about the cleanliness, the health of the dogs, and if they have a postage stamp lawn where all the dogs do their business, that's a lot of business. And it could be a health issue, I think, for children that are playing. It also, I think, is going to increase the number of complaints about nuisance dogs, which the police have a difficult time resolving, and usually the dog owners end up hating the police. I think if you're going to allow more dogs, which I'm not totally opposed to, then we look at square footage, or like the city of Auburn, they prohibited dogs in multifamily units because of those reasons. And it's unreasonable to think that if you have 10 or 12 dogs in an apartment complex, that there's not going to be all kinds of nuisance issues there. It's going to increase a police response. I'm also concerned about, you know, the family that owns 4 or 5 dogs in an apartment, and they have a litter of 7 or 8 puppies. And then we deal with a time frame. How do we get rid of those puppies? I think a good approach is square footage. I agree, if you have the square footage and you want more animals, I think there should be some, that should be allowed. But when we talk about multi-family units, I think that's where we're going to run into all kinds of issues, all kinds of concerns. And by the way, we had a gentleman that lived in the city that had 15 dogs a couple of years ago, and it stood the test of a court hearing, and that the judge agreed that 3 dogs is reasonable. And so he ordered this individual to get rid of these dogs, and he had a psychologist certify that they were service dogs, and the judge still sided with the city on the number 3. So some precedence there for the number 3.
Does your constituent live in a single family or multi-unit? Do you know?
I'm sorry, what was that?
I was asking Claude, but he's on mute.
She lives in an apartment, and but the bottom line here, Mr. Mayor, is that she's just moved to the city and she's looking to relocate into Waterville, and this is at a time when we're hoping that young professionals will find this an attractive town to live in. I don't think we want to be scaring people away.
Chief.
Yes.
1 extra dog, going from 3 to 4, and again, square footage being outside. When I think of square footage, I'm always thinking of rural residential being allowed to have more, only because they've got the space. Is a 4th dog, now that we allow 3, really going to be that much of a nuisance?
Very hard to tell. Again, it all goes back to, do we have responsible dog owners? Some are, some are not. And if you go to 2 and 3 multifamily units, you could have 12 dogs.
16, yeah, up to 16.
Very small space.
Yep.
And again, I have concerns about health issues. You know, we get complaints in code enforcement all the time about uncleanliness and rubbish outside of not just multifamily units, but even single family homes, and then add 10, 12, 14 dogs to that mix. I think it's a health issue. But for those responsible owners who have the square footage, if you go by square footage or some other measurement, I think that's fine. We shouldn't restrict that. If they want to have 10 dogs, they have 10 dogs. We do with chickens, right?
Yeah, Patty, I have a question for you. People, when they register the dogs, are allowed to register up to 3. is there any way for a person that may say, let's say 4 dogs, like Claude's constituent, is there any way for them to ask for an additional permit?
No, not in the current ordinance, the way it's written.
And the reason I say that is because, like what Chief Massey is describing, and I know dogs are different than bars, so nobody shoot the messenger. I'm just wondering if there's a provision, Chief, that we could allow somebody to petition for 1 extra dog. And then if they become a nuisance, just like we would with a bar, not renew that license going forward.
That would be
sounds a little complicated, Jay. Why don't I take back some of the comments that we've had tonight, and I'll rework my ordinance and bring it back before the council in the very near future.
All right, Claude, are you tabling then?
No, I'm just going to
withdraw
I'm just going to withdraw the resolution for the moment, and once I get it in a little bit better shape, I'll bring it back.
Okay, Flavia, you have one more question?
Yeah, I just have a curious question. Like, how many actual people that we have in the city that has 3 dogs registered? Like, is that a big number?
We haven't really done, any analysis on that necessarily. There are a lot of people that have multiple dogs, certainly. And we've found a few instances where people wanted to register more than 3, that we've had to let them know that they couldn't, in fact, register the 4th dog legally. That they weren't allowed to have that 4th dog. So we haven't done that analysis, but we certainly can provide that information to the council.
So if they were to keep that 4th dog would just be there but not be registered.
Well, in theory, they're not supposed to keep the dog. So, what ends up happening with that, I'm not sure. We kind of let the animal control officer know, but we don't follow it through on the licensing end.
Okay.
And Flavia, most likely, if the dogs aren't being a nuisance, nobody's calling the code nobody's calling on that dog.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
So I mean, go ahead, Claude.
And certainly, we want people to follow the licensing regulations.
Absolutely.
So we don't want to make it so that people have to be scofflaws to keep their extra dog. We want it. We're trying to keep everybody happy.
Well, I mean, I get that to a point, but if we were in a situation where we were at 4 dogs and this person moved into town, they had 5, are we gonna have the same discussion? I'm just throwing. I'm not going to answer that question tonight. Like as you take that back, and we were trying to make everybody happy, you make that statement. I just want to know, and if you say yes, then great, it is what it is. But again, we have 3, and now we're going to go 4, and that's fine. I get it. But I'm just saying, if we were at 4 and they had 5, are we still having this discussion?
Well, that's why I thought that just going to a nuisance system rather than an arbitrary number was a better way to go. But I'm open to all suggestions. As I say, so let me rework things, and we'll come back at a future date to take a look at this.
Mayor, may I just let you know that Paula Raymond has her hand raised, and she may want to speak to this before we put this issue away tonight?
Sure, bring her in. And Claude, I'll reiterate, my thing is, no matter what you come up with, I think there should be a separate standard for rural residential. I think that people living out in the countryside deserve a little bit more leeway than, say, somebody living in a four-unit apartment building. Hey, Paula.
Hi, thank you very much for letting me in. I just wanted to thank Chief Massey for bringing up the other side of it, only because, as you know, Jay, you were at our Senate meeting a couple of weeks ago. It was one of the issues that was brought up because of more the health issue than the safety issue. We have a lot of rental properties, and oftentimes property owners who rent properties do look the other way. We also are aware that Many don't register their dogs, whether it's because they can't afford it. We worry about the fact that they might not be having their shots. There's so many side issues, so many variables that need to be looked at to quite carefully. And I really appreciated that comment about if we allow 4, the next time around somebody comes in with 5 and can justify why they have 5. It just would be something that just keeps going until it blows up. And we look at the poop issue, as we've talked about so many times, just in our neighborhood, at the parks, on sidewalks. It's just, people are not, and you mentioned it a while back, that we can't mitigate how people behave. Well, if we can't, then maybe allowing more dogs in an apartment situation. It's just very concerning for those of us who live in this particular ward anyway. I can't speak for other wards, but we've been talking about this for quite a while. I mean, several years now, knocking on doors, giving flyers, carrying bags and offering to, use the bag and put it and throw it away. We've tried several different ways to help people to understand that it is a health issue for children playing in the parks and things like that. So again, I want to thank Chief Massey because he's certainly, he would be one of the ones that we call. And we've tried the code enforcement officer, and we've tried the dog person, and it doesn't change anything. It hasn't as of yet. So I appreciate that Claude is willing to go back and take a look at this again. And you know what? We don't have a dog. We used to. They do become like a family member. I'll oftentimes say the only thing a dog doesn't do is talk because they're that human-like this day and age. So I appreciate people wanting to have a pet. I'm just wondering, how far does it go? Because it does affect a lot of other people. That's it.
Thank you, Paula.
Okay.
Claude, did you say you're going to take this off?
Yeah.
How does that work? Can Claude just remove this from the agenda until he
I'll
figures it out?
withdraw it to revise things, and at some point I'll put it back on the agenda.
So we don't have to vote on that.
Postponed to a date, an uncertain date, basically.
I'm an uncertain date. We'll just I'm going to go back and work on it some more.
All right. So
may I ask one more request? Is it possible that we can bring this to the attention of the citizens to see where they're coming from, short of a referendum? Just to get a sense of where people are coming from each ward, how they're dealing with it, if there are issues in other wards?
I would say at this point, Paula, people need to start messaging and emailing their counselors on how they feel.
Right, but if they don't know that this is something on the table, how would they know to do that?
I mean, these are public minutes. The newspaper is going to be doing some reporting on it. I mean, we can't reach every single resident to try to get their opinion on
Right. I get that.
Small ordinance.
I was hoping for an answer.
I appreciate it. The answer is I have no answer for you.
I'm trying to avoid endless tabling, Paula. That's one of the that's easier for me to take it back and work on it until I get something a little bit better, and then put it out there, because it still is going to require some comment anyway.
Sure.
Yep.
I certainly want an amicable resolution to this. I'm not one to tell people what to do when they have pets or don't have pets. This has just been an issue for us in our neighborhood for a long time. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to have a voice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Claude, are you asking to postpone to a later date?
No, I'm just going to withdraw the resolution. We'll bring it back when I'm ready to put it in front of the council again.
He doesn't need a motion with that.
I don't need a motion for that.
He's the one that he's the author.
I don't need.
All right, done deal.
Moving on.
So gone. So I can move on to the next one, Patty. Resolution 135, 2021.
I suppose, yes.
Well, that's what we're doing. Thank you, Claude, for that.
You're welcome.
A resolution providing for bid award library bookshelves.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Any questions on this resolution? I see none. Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
I love the library. Yes.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
Did you get the I love in there too, Patty?
Yes, I made note of that.
Order 136, 2021. Steve, are we tabling this?
Yes, indefinitely. It's no longer necessary.
All right. Who put it up? Can't we just remove it like Claude did?
I did, and I don't have a vote.
He didn't have a vote. We still got to go through this motion.
All right.
I'll move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
She's got to read title.
Oh.
Then we can motion.
An order providing for authorizing an expenditure to modify traffic signal equipment.
Move to postpone indefinitely.
Second.
And third. Can I get a roll call on that, Patty?
Technically, the resolution was not moved. So if it wasn't moved, or if there wasn't a second, if it was moved and there is no second, then it would just die.
Or we could have just voted and be done with it.
Oh, killing us.
Or we could just table it forever again. You know,
Let's just table it. We're already halfway there now.
Okay. All right.
Patty, can I get a roll call?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
Yes, forever.
Council Thomas.
Yes.
Vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving on to Resolution 137, 2021.
A resolution providing for establishment of municipal pool fees for the 2021 season.
Move to adopt.
Second.
Do we have somebody here from Parks and Rec?
Yes, Matt is here.
Matt is here.
We can bring him in.
Please. And Claude, you raised your hand. I'll let you go first. And then I have some questions too.
All right. The pool is opening after being closed last year due to the pandemic. Parks and Recreation plan after rebuilding the pool is to increase fees, anticipating revenue of $27,000, an increased revenue of $27,000. If the city postpones the fee increase, it would forego the increased revenue. On the other hand, the users of the pool, particularly the kids, would find that the cost of visiting the pool has remained unchanged this year. This would be a statement by the city that things are returning to normal. Should be noted that the city is spending money to paint downtown traffic lights and flower planters for downtown restaurants. Indeed, the city made extraordinary accommodations to the downtown restaurants to help them through the pandemic. It just seems fundamentally fair to give the kids who have had to endure a really tough school year a break this summer. Therefore, I'm suggesting that we keep the rate the same this year and make any increase in next year's budget.
So, Rick, go ahead.
Councilor Frankie, is that a motion?
Yeah, I'm going to make that a motion.
I'll second that.
Can we let Matt say whatever he was going to say?
Yeah.
Well, I talked to Steve a little bit about this today. I think I presented you with the information that you were looking for after the last meeting, and it's really up to you folks in my eyes. I mean, the numbers are there. The numbers that we project for revenues are, I'm going to say they're conservative. I think it's going to be a really big year at the pool. It's going to be a learning experience for us. I think we'll be able to, we'll have the historical after this year to kind of understand what our numbers look like. I guess, I mean, I have more information here, numbers wise, for you folks, but really, I mean, Councillor Frankie did articulate his position pretty well. So, you know, moving forward, it's up to you folks.
I just want to point out that my children have never paid for park passes, and it usually comes out of the parents' pocket. I agree. I like Claude's sentiment. I have some other issues. Can you tell me, if Claude's motion doesn't pass, what is the difference between a pool pass and a pool pass with slides?
Right, that's new this year, Mr. Mayor. So, well, that's just what it is. We do offer, you know, we expect there are going to be kids and families that want to just enjoy the slide, so they don't have to buy, you know, the whole season pass for the main pool. So we just think that's another option for folks because they're so attractive and they're just unique in themselves. So
my concern is that kids can be mean-spirited. And if you've got one family that bought passes to use the slide and another family that can't afford to pay for the passes to use the slide, and those groups of kids are playing together and their friends want to go over to the slide, and the little kid goes, I can't really go because I don't have permission to go to the slide. Is there a way to sort of have that somewhere? Maybe, is it like an extra $10 for the pool slide?
that's about what it is for residents. Yeah.
Is there a way that in the future we're able to like just make the entire pool pass $5 more expensive, meet in the middle somewhere, so that everyone who gets the pool pass is also able to use the slides? Well, I hope you understand what I'm getting at. Like
I do, and it's possible, but it was a group of us that got together last year, and we really we looked around at other. And what's hard is there aren't that many like facilities, but for example, Funtown, you can go to Splashtown, or you can go to Funtown, or you can get the combo pass. So it's really in line with that. It's another option. Although I do appreciate and understand what you're saying. I don't want to see that, where the there are the haves and the have-nots.
Which is exactly what I don't want to see.
Right. Yeah, no, I don't think anyone wants to see that, but it's another revenue stream that we thought would be viable.
Okay. Councilor Thomas.
Well, a couple of things. I mean, the city spent $1 million on this pool, so yes, we spent $25,000 for some planters for downtown, but we spent $1 million. So there is a pool, because if we didn't spend $1 million, there would be no pool, because there was holes big enough in the pool that pool was not going to survive another year or two. So, we spent quite a bit of money so that there continues to be a pool. And I'm looking at this, we're charging $5 for the pool only and $8 for the pool and the slides. And I mean, part of the point is, some kids aren't big enough to ride on the slides, so why make them pay for something they can't use? And maybe a compromise here is that we do charge for the slide, but also maybe our non-resident price increases do kick in, and our resident prices possibly could stay the same as they were before. Perhaps that's a compromise. I don't think we should continue to subsidize. Taxpayers should not continue to subsidize this facility for people from out of town necessarily. Right. This is 2020. And we're charging like 1990 prices for this pool, which is brand new. This is the pool itself is a $3.5 million project, and I don't know what the total price tag on the slides was, but we've got like a $5 or $6 million facility over there, and the debt service on the bond, the money we borrowed, is $60,000 a year for the next 20 years, which is a new expense over there. And then on top of that, for the $2.5 million that we took from the Alphons, we're obligated to set aside $25,000 this year, $25,000 yet next year, and then $50,000 every year moving forward for long-term maintenance. So this facility is costing us $110,000 a year more than it was before we fixed it up. And that money has to come from somewhere. So, you know, I don't mind if we wanted some sort of compromise potentially, but we have to, you know, this facility has to move in the direction of supporting itself. And that was the bill of goods we laid out when we sold borrowing this money to the public. You know, because there are lots of people, I think you'll hear both sides. There are lots of people who think the pool is a service to the community and it should be really cheap. And then there are other people who like, I don't go there. Why am I paying for it?
Right.
So we have to find some sort of a balance between those two positions.
Anyone else?
I mean, I agree with Eric. I mean, like, and I sit on this committee, and I don't agree with the schedule, but I went along with it. I think it's not. I think it could be a little bit more aggressive, you know, and to get those numbers where they need to be. So this makes more of a profit, you know, sooner, while the pool is newer. But like I went along with it, and I think that I think it's more than fair, given the product that we're going to deliver, you know, in just about 2 weeks. So I'm in favor of moving forward with the changes and the price changes as proposed in the original ordinance resolution.
Councilor Kleepak. Oh, sorry, Rick.
No, that's what I was telling you.
Sorry. Councilor Kleepak.
Yeah. So the first thing, I agree with both sides of this issue. I think Councilor Frankie's sentiment is admirable, all that, et cetera. And I definitely agree with Eric that we want to maintain the long-term solvency of the pool here. Can we find some sort of compromise here where, because first of all, not every child need, you know, like the parents of every child in Waterville don't need necessarily a $20 break. Many do, but many do not. And I think some parents in the city of Waterville will be happy to support the pool in whatever way they can. So the first thing is it unwieldy to create some sort of means-based application for a season pass abatement, maybe using the exact same mechanism that they have over at the AYC or something like that for parents that would, you know, et cetera, et cetera. Or secondly, failing that, if that's like too cumbersome, can we just, is it a paltry measure to have like a couple ice cream Saturdays or something where the city ponies up for a bunch of ice cream for the kids? It'll kind of drum, you know, some sort of thing like that, some sort of token to get excitement around the pool. The kids go there, it's a special day, they get something out of it, but it's not going to cut dramatically into the revenue stream.
Well, to your first question, Councilor Kleepak, we do offer scholarships for Waterville residents. I think we talked about that at the last meeting. And that's very popular. You know, we have a formula, you know, where people complete a scholarship form. We review their, you know, their financials, and we, you know, we award in increments of 25, 50 to 75% based on that. So we do have that one covered.
Thank you. I apologize for that. I'm sorry.
Councilor Thomas, did you have something? Or Morris?
Well, can we do kind of like, you know, like the state certainly didn't come back and say, well, you guys are in a pandemic and, you know, all state parks are now free this entire year, so go out and enjoy them. But they do offer a couple of weekends that you can go do, you know, free fishing and things like that. Like, I would be interested in hearing a compromise. We can make the grand opening weekend, you know, like the 19th, 20th. You know, make that, you know, no fee, no pass requirement, and then passes start on the 21st
for Waterville residents.
For Waterville residents.
Counselor Oliveira, then Counselor Green. You're on mute.
Alrighty. So I pretty much said I echo what everybody's been saying with the fee. I agree that because of inflation, the fee is gonna go up. But also it's like if we can I think who just spoke, I think it was Morris that just said to kind of have like incentive around the pool, like a day where you get like a percentage off because they already have the scholarship. Another thing too that I was gonna say with the pool is have a height limit, because it's not fair for the kids that can't reach that height limit to go on the slide for them to pay for a pass that another child would pay. So that fee would have to go a little bit down for the kids with the slide. So it's just pretty much like a height.
Well, they would just get the pool pass, which would be different.
What happened?
They would just get the pool pass. They wouldn't get, you don't have to buy both. You can buy one or the other. So if they're too short to ride the slide, they wouldn't get this pool and slide combo pass. They would just get the pool pass.
So
yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
How would that work? So I know it's not just height. They have to pass the deep end test.
Deep end too.
Not for the slides.
What's that? Yes.
Not for the slides.
No. The slides don't go into a pool. They just go into the end of the slide.
Yeah, but listen, I'll remind the council here, before I was on the city council, when you were considering passing the $1 million, I actually stood up at that council meeting with the pool water drying on my daughter's skin from her struggling to pass the deep end test so she could ride the slide. She was tall enough, but they don't allow you on maybe that's different now that they have new slides.
It's completely different slides. The slides before entered into a pool in which you needed to swim. That was, it was, I think it entered into almost a 4-foot deep pool. So these just end in the track, and like you don't you're in any more water than you go down the slide in.
There's no
completely different.
I didn't understand that. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's getting late.
Counselor Green, then Counselor Oliveira.
Yeah, so I do agree with the idea of if we're going to keep fees on the higher side, that maybe we pass it on to non-residents. I understand the need to generate revenue from the pool. I think it's also important, though, I mean, we just agreed to accept funds for, what was it, $3 million. But it wasn't indicated that we had a responsibility to have a maintenance program. So I think it's important for us to know these things when we are approving to accept funds, so that we know the extent of our responsibility.
It was private.
It was?
Yeah, that was from the beginning. It was a much higher
original
amount.
deal, Rebecca.
It was a higher amount.
Right. That was the original deal. So we voted on that.
Okay.
Fall.
Right.
My bad. Sorry. I just thought maybe that was something that, that we just agreed on. Okay. Yeah. So I do think, it's very complicated to come up with this fee schedule, obviously. And so I do appreciate the work that went into it. It seems like it is conservative while continuing to generate some revenue. The one other thing that I would suggest is that, maybe we could treat this in the spirit of a museum, which is, free one afternoon a week. I think having one day when it's free for everyone is probably not that helpful, and might not be possible. Just a thought. I appreciate that there is a scholarship option available for people that need it. So
well, and Matt, we've discussed for a while trying to keep the pool open later, and I know we have issues around lifeguards, but maybe at the end of the season we could have some days just for Waterville residents that are free or something. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, it's possible. We've been in contact with Colby and the students at Colby to, hopefully extend the season for one more week. That would be pushing it, but I think we can try to do that. I like the idea for the free weekends. And again, it's up to you, but for Waterville residents only. Like Councilor Green said, more than just one day. I like opening weekend and maybe the weekend of wherever 4th of July is, to be another one. And it sounds like there might be consensus amongst you for the, implementing the non-resident rate structure and keeping the residents the same. I don't know.
Right, but we would add the pool, this charge for the pools, and maybe that's what we do. Maybe it's not a free day, but maybe you get to ride the slide for free or something, I guess we sort of have to come to a resolution of this, or we could potentially vote on this item. If we want Matt to rework it based on everything he's heard from us, we could vote on this next week at our budget meeting.
Sounds like it needs to be tabled until Matt comes back with what he had just said, and I'd be okay with that but to Council Frankie's point, we want to return to normal, and postponing for a year is also in the back of my mind. So I think we need to have more discussion about this. I think we could go on for hours about it and go around in circles, but Matt's got a good baseline to take this and rework it a little bit with the ideas that everybody's thrown together, because we're in about 4 different directions right now.
Right. So maybe, Matt, you can get with the committee and come up with a proposal based on all the things you've heard tonight.
Right. Yeah, I'd like to do that. The budget meeting sounds great. I wouldn't want to wait until the next council meeting because we're getting, like Councilor Morris said, we're getting close to opening date. So yeah, we can do that.
Claude, you and I have motion on the table. Do you want to retract?
No, why don't you make a motion to table this one, Rick, and we'll keep this one alive.
I'll make a motion that we table it till the budget meeting next week.
Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Yep. Council Morris?
This is, yes, the table to next week. Yeah.
Yep. Council Oliveira?
Yes.
Council Klepak?
Yeah.
Council Green? Was that yes, Council Green? I'm sorry. Council Foss?
Yes.
Council Frankie?
Yes.
Council Thomas?
Yes.
The vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed. And this was to table till next week for the budget workshop, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Matt, thanks again.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Matt.
Moving on to Resolution 138, 2021.
A resolution providing for establishing a safe zone, 19 Colby Street.
Move to adopt.
Second. We're tabling this, Steve? Is that what we're doing?
Yes, legal counsel has advised doing that in favor of doing further investigation regarding the possibility of existing safe zones at the state courthouse, the Social Security building, and the police station that might impact this particular decision.
I would just point out that it looks like there could be some people who've been waiting for 2.5 hours now to possibly speak on this issue. So I don't know if we want to give them a chance to speak before we table.
I will say, do we need it? And I'm not going to make the motion. Do we need it tabled till the next city council, or do we need it tabled indefinitely?
The next city council meeting at this point.
Yes.
So I don't see anybody's hand up, but if you can hear me, if you have something that you wanted to say on this issue, raise your hand.
All right. Can we bring in Edward Duguay?
Yes. Mr. Duguay, can you hear us? You're on mute, sir.
Still on mute.
Are you
Sorry. There you go.
Unmute him.
Okay, I can hear you now, sir.
All right, thank you. My name is Mark Walker. We are at Ed Dugay's business, and we have Chris Valley, who is the realtor that was involved in the sale of this particular, or in the purchase and sale agreement of this particular building. Ed Duguay is a consultant for one of the businesses that may rent in the building. I'm an attorney for this group. And we have Annie, who is one of the co-owners, you know, if the sale were to go through. And we have just found out about this, and I want to thank your city clerk for alerting us that this issue might impact one of the potential uses for this building. We have a buyer's group that wants to buy. We have a purchase and sale agreement that's been signed by both parties. We've been in, you know, they have a business plan that would make use of the building. I think a very good use, probably a better use than what it's been used for over the last few years. We're all from Hollowell. The group that you see here, we are all from Hollowell. And we've been up to your city many, many times, and so we're familiar with the property in the area. We did not know about the application for a safe zone, so we're just here to say we'd like to go ahead with the purchase and sale agreement. I'm sure the sellers would too, but if this were declared a safe zone, it would impact the uses that might be available for the buyers.
Thank you for that. We've sort of had some of those internal discussions also, and I share your sentiment.
Thank you.
Anyone else want to speak? Go ahead, Eric.
I would say it potentially may already legally be in a safe zone, right, Steve? That's the issue. We're trying to find out if
that's correct.
Right, because the courthouse, the police station, Social Security Administration are all up in that vicinity, and so you may already legally fall within a safe zone, even if we weren't to take any action.
As with the homeless shelter.
The code enforcement officer checked with everyone at the city, and they said it was allowable and not within that so many feet.
So we just have some more internal stuff to look at before we're going to bring this to any sort of vote. There's a lot of other discussion that we have to make sure that we aren't doing something prematurely to begin with. And Steve, you say that's on the advice of our council?
Yes.
So, and we're going to table this until
I would say until your next regular meeting.
Okay. So the 15th?
Yes.
And everyone
should. Think I'm going to move that forward now.
Mr. Duguay or whoever they are.
Yeah, the lawyer there, Mark.
Good evening. Thank you very much. My name is Ed Duguay, and I am representing the partners that are purchasing the property. But we did, Chris Valley's here, the realtor, but we did check with code over a month ago, and then he had given us the green light that was indeed a zone that we could perform what we want to do there. But he said, give me a week to check on the setbacks, because I know the setbacks always have a major issue. But he cleared us on the setbacks as well. So we continued doing the due diligence. We've had a building inspection. We've already obtained the financing. So we're well down the road to operating the project.
I just ask that you be patient with us and give us a couple more weeks for us to also do our due diligence. Nobody is trying, at least on the city side, we're not trying to cut your legs out from under you. We just want to make sure that we're doing this the right way.
We'll do it. We'd like to work with you on it.
No, I appreciate that. And you guys can reach out to me anytime you want, via email or phone, and I'm willing to talk to you and have a conversation. I'm sure most of the counselors are too. Anybody else have questions for this group before we let them go? I see none. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming. I appreciate your coming on short notice.
Thank you.
Patty, we got nobody else that wants to speak on this?
I don't believe so. I don't see any other hands raised.
All right, then, Rick, you had a motion on the table?
Yeah, I'll make that motion, table till next regularly scheduled council meeting.
Second.
Second.
Patty, can I get a roll call on that?
Council Morris,
Yes.
Council Olivera,
Yes.
Council Klepak,
Yes.
Council Green,
Yes.
Council Foss,
Yes.
Council Frankie,
You're on mute, Claude.
Yes.
thank you. Council Thomas,
Yes.
the vote is 7 in favor and 0 opposed.
All right. Moving to community council updates. Any councilors have an update? Rebecca Green and then Thomas Klepak.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that we have a potential launch date for our pilot food recycling program, June 17th at the Mitchell School. And so hoping that we'll have a good showing for that. It'll be kicking off our program, and we're hoping that to get a good turnout that day for a successful program. But there'll be more about that, I'm sure, coming out in the news. Thank you.
Councilor Klepak.
Yeah, hi. So I just wanted to update the council on some matters that I've been putting a significant amount of energy into the last 3 or 4 weeks. The first of them was I've asked the city manager to look into securing funds for a little bit of soil testing to assess the city's exposure of polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS, the forever chemicals that are in firefighting foams that have been used in the city for training purposes over the years. And 3, I've talked to the former fire chief and the current fire chief, David LaFountain and Sean, about these usages. And we've identified 3 sites in the city that I think it would be wise for the city to test for both PFAS at all 3 of these sites, and for volatile organic compounds, specifically toluene, at one of the sites in town, just to understand what the acute point source of these might be, what the exposure might be here in the city. If anyone has any questions about that. The second issue that I've been working on is in relation to brown tail moths. So I think I'll begin this one by starting at kind of the end. I've done quite a bit of work on this, and a number of constituents, I've spoken to a number of constituents on the issue of brown tail moths here in Waterville. So I'm going to start at the end and read a few of the letters that I've received. I have almost 20 of them here. This is from Cassie Ferris. I'm writing today because our property has crabapple tree that's infested with brown tail moth caterpillars. Our beautiful tree is practically destroyed. My children are covered in a troublesome rash. I hope Waterville can dedicate some of its municipal budget this year to eradicate this menace before we're stuck with it forever. I have another lengthy one from a woman named Kim Nashid in Ward 3. Cassie's in Ward 4. Molly Durin I believe this is a Ward 3 as well. Jen and Jesse Meredith from 7 Wilson Park. I don't know what ward that is. Maybe it might be Eric's. Elena Monastreva is here and Carrie Haberstock are both here in Ward 3. Judy Coombs, Barbara Beardsley, Martha Reinhardt. I don't know if you want to see it. Some of these constituents have included photographs of the really nasty looking rashes that they have incurred from exposure to the brown-tailed moths. So now to explain a little bit of the legwork that I've done. I have spoken at length with a number of people, a person named Tom Schmelk, who is the head entomologist for the Maine Forest Service. And he's directly under Allison Canody, the state entomologist. And this guy basically reviewed the biology of the situation and the reason that Waterville is dealing with this problem right now. Brown-tailed moths were introduced in Maine in 1897 on an ornamental rose bush down in Freeport. They've been fairly localized to that region. They have outbreaks that last anywhere from 7 to typically 12 years. And then there's a rhythm to it of an annularity of about 15 years in between outbreaks, depending on weather conditions. The current outbreak started in 2015. However, in 2019, so a little bit about the biology. The brown-tailed moth has only 3 native predators or pathogens that take them out. There are parasitic wasps and flies that do the job, but not especially effectively. By far the most effective way of ending a brown-tailed moth outbreak is the growth of a fungus called Entomophaga aliciae. And this fungus grows when we have springs that are cool and moist. And to end one of these outbreaks, there needs to be 2 to 3 potentially subsequent years of cool to moist springs for the growth of this fungus. In 2019, the spring conditions in Freeport were just so, and allowed the growth of this fungus, which knocked the moths down. But the prevailing wind that time of the year, as everyone's probably aware, it's a south-southeasterly wind, and central Maine did not have that kind of weather condition. So what it did was, for the first time, push this this nuisance, this pest, into Kennebec County. And this year we are experiencing, so 2020 was the first real year that there was much of a flush. It wasn't quite the problem last year, first of all, because we're in the beginning of the establishment of this invasive species here in this geographic region. But secondly, it was COVID, and people were not outside quite as much as they are this year. We have a real problem right now in Waterville, and we need to get on top of it. We need to understand how to deal with this problem. So unfortunately, the biology of brown-tailed moths is working against us. When brown-tailed moth becomes a nuisance to people, when it causes these rashes, when it causes respiratory distress, often acute, it can be quite acute if the moths are not handled correctly, it's kind of too late to deal with the problem for that season. I wish I had spoken up at the last council meeting. The meeting went so late last time and everybody was pretty wiped, so I didn't want to inflict any of this on you at the time, and I should have, because we are rapidly leaving the window for treatment for this season. Many of the so I also talked to a woman named Megan, let me look her name up here again, Megan Patterson, who is the director of the Maine Pesticide Control Board, also at great length. And this is the state agency that licenses all of the companies that are able to treat and do various treatments for brown-tailed moth. And many of them, one of them that I spoke to today, Bartlett, which is down past Portland someplace. They recently treated Colby College's campus, which is how I first became aware that this was going to become a problem. They stopped treating the last day of May. That's an arbitrary line. It really is more dependent upon when everything emerges from their caterpillars and they're not localized and they're more spread out. So you can't have this sort of targeted treatment. Anyways, what I suggest, is that everybody I talked to? I talked to a lot of people. So what I suggest is that that the city should apply to the state CDC, and I talked to the epidemiologist at the Maine CDC who is in charge of zoonotic infections, a guy named Horace something or other, I forget his last name, but he went through the entire process that the city would have to go to make a declaration of public health nuisance. The reason why we should consider doing that is because it would enable the city of Waterville to spend public funds on private lands and on public right-of-ways much more readily. And it would enable us, if we so chose, to have a more holistic treatment of the area and sort of knock this problem back before next year we're in the same situation and we have people dropping trees, 200-year-old trees left and right, and people are having really significant health impacts. I don't know if looks like the Parks Department split, but he could talk about this. But I believe, for example, they recently dropped a 200-plus-year-old oak tree. Oh, these bugs prefer to chew on oak trees and palm fruits, so like apples and pears, etc. So I don't know if any of you have seen this on your property or heard from any of your constituents, but you can notice them, and particularly they're in the crowns of the oak trees and on the apple trees. You'll see in the crowns they've been defoliated, and then there'll be these small little webby things. It's not like the gypsy moth. It's a little bit of a different kind of egg case than you may be used to seeing. If the city is able to get a declaration of public health nuisance, to do that, we would have to apply to the CDC. There's a whole, we need to apply to the CDC. We need to get a letter from the Maine Forest Service, who is this guy that I talked to, Tom Smelkwitz, documenting the infestation in the town, which should be no problem whatsoever. And we need a letter of support from our local health officer supporting this request. Is that Denise Murray, Steve?
I am not certain. I would check with her. I'll check with Chief Essler also.
Yeah, we need to find out who the local health officer is, because that person needs to sign off on this if we go ahead. If the council is skeptical of whether this is warrants a public health warrant, I would public health nuisance declaration. We could go through an initial survey of the town, which would cost about $3,000 to conduct that survey. And I think what that's going to do is tell us what I believe to be true after numerous anecdotal evidence and speaking to various arborists. I've had conversation with a number of arborists that have been throughout town, and it is widely known amongst them that central Maine is littered with it right now. I also advocate that if the city moves forward with this, that we contact our neighboring communities and urge them to do the same. This declaration of public health nuisance, again, was not, the regulations for that were not designed around the brown-tail moth biology. Unfortunately, if we were to declare it this year, it would only be good up until December 31st. We would need to also apply starting September 1st for the following year, because the correct treatment regime for this is you do a citywide survey in the winter when the leaves are off the trees, so you can see where all of the egg cases are. And at that point, you can do targeted excision, meaning cutting them out a little bit more easily in the winter. And then you can be prepared for spring treatment protocol. And I don't know how much you all want to hear about that. I can talk about that at length. There are a couple different options. It is a little bit complicated because the use of if we were to use spray pesticides, you can also do injections into a tree before the buds break and it runs up the vasculature of the tree. But if we were to do spraying, it's complicated a little bit by the fact that various pesticides have regulations around them, given the proximity to tidal affected waters. And although we don't think we are, Waterville actually is that, because the first impoundment of the Kennebec is here in Waterville. So there has to be, depending on the type of pesticide that would be sprayed, there are setbacks from the river that would need to be observed. And the question that must be running through your minds as I try to wrap this up here, as we approach the bewitching hour, past the bewitching hour, is if the city were to consider some sort of treatment regime for the, spraying, excision, injections, like all these different things. And if people want to learn more about it, I can talk about the organic versus more chemically types of pesticides that could be used and how those would be used or whatever. I've learned a lot about all this. So a number of just ballpark estimates that I have gotten from various people that are certified through the license through the Pesticide Control Board had suggested that it could cost, so for the first year, next year, this coming year, a treatment that would be able to manage the problem in the city of Waterville and what they project to be the growth over the coming season would take a team of 3 or 4 workers about a week, about 5 days of treatment going throughout the city, surveying, and then going throughout the city to do that treatment. May cost in the ballpark of $50,000 to do that for the first year, and then 25 per year for the next 2 additional years. And the thing is, you have to think about managing this problem on a multi-year scale, because what we're looking for is a 2-year sequence of cold, moist weather so that this outbreak can stop. So, yeah, that's my story. That's what I've been working on.
Thanks, Councilor Klepak. I'm sure we'll talk about that more. I know the Ferris family well. Actually, we just went camping this weekend, and my comment to them was burn the tree.
Yeah, but that's not going to work for every oak in Waterville. That's not going to work for every apple tree.
We can't burn them all down. And
Yeah,
I hope there's just an apple tree.
They're all over town. I mean, I encountered them up at a friend's house.
They're awful. They're awful.
It really isn't the kind of thing that can be dealt with by individual homeowners, because you're just moving the problem around town. So we do need to have a citywide approach to this problem.
Klepak, we're going to bring this up at a council meeting. Is that correct, Steve?
Which meeting?
the next regular council meeting, we're bringing that up to at least try to declare an emergency.
It's a
Yes.
public health nuisance. Be careful in your language. It's not an emergency.
Okay, public health
nuisance.
Done. That's the 15th.
We want to make sure that our water's clean.
It's only an emergency if you get the rash. Then it's an emergency.
Well, then it's emergency for me.
I got the rash.
Personal emergency.
I've done my own survey of too much surveying of this myself here in town. I've definitely fallen prey to the problem. Oh, just a little tip, just a public health tip about this. If you like the rash is pretty immediate. If you get exposure, the first thing to do is get yourself a roll of duct tape. I'm not BSing you here. Get a roll of duct tape, stick the tape right over the rash, and then rip it off like you're waxing yourself. Just rip it off, and it pulls the hairs out. It actually does work. And then wash the area and change your clothes and wash those. But it does work. I had an earlier exposure, and it stopped it. So
the multi uses of duct tape, and I'm sure it does pull the hair. Any other counselors with updates? Well, I'm not a counselor, and I do have an update. We didn't get a chance to put it together, but hopefully by the next meeting, I'll have a proclamation ready. But just so everybody aware, it is June 1st, and June is Pride Month. So if you've got your rainbow flags, put them up. Some of you have had them up all year round, but it is time to get them up. And we are going to move to community notes. And before we start community notes, I want to make sure that anyone who is speaking is going to speak on a matter that we have not touched on today. And if you are going to, a community notes really is a time to talk about community events, things that are happening in our community, not to dwell on grievances. You should be doing that before the meeting. All questions, I ask that you send them to me. I will pick a counselor that can answer those questions. We are not here to allow the public to go after counselors during community notes. There are other avenues for that, email and phone calls. Can we bring Jennifer in first? And then I see Anna Holdner.
Yes. Jennifer, can you hear us? Whoops, you're on mute.
Yes, I can.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can hear you.
Okay, excellent. I think I'm probably breaking the rules because you said not to speak on anything you've spoken on, which I want to do. But the reason I want to do that is also based on the question that I had, which is there going to be a time where these meetings are public again and not all held by Zoom? Because during this meeting, there were times I wanted to comment, but there didn't seem to be a time to raise your hand to make a comment. Perhaps I just missed the opportunity on those. I did send Patty some questions, but I guess during the meeting, she doesn't see them. So it's a little harder to be involved in these meetings at this point when they're all on Zoom. I love actually the fact that people can participate from home and think going forward, maybe we could even have that be a part of a public meeting, but it's way harder for people to participate this way. I missed an opportunity. You were talking about the pool. I had a suggestion I wanted to be able to say at the end of that. I think that the brown tail moth issue is definitely an issue. I wanted to say I definitely support that, and that Councillor Klepek thinks that we all know that the winds are southeasterly prevailing winds is awesome. I don't even know which way south is, so that's probably not, I don't know that everyone knows this stuff, but anyway, that's just it. I would just like the meetings at least to have some sort of public portion, or to make it easier to ask questions. I know, like, usually you guys talk about something, there's a place where you can stand in line if you have a question about something you're talking about. So it just would be nice to have that.
Jen, in the future, if we're in the middle of talking about a subject, absolutely put your hand up while we're having that discussion because we will see you.
Okay.
So there's never a bad time to put your hand up. And I did miss that in counselor updates that I am, and I have talked to other counselors, I am in complete favor of moving to in-person meetings. I will say that I've had discussions with Steve Daly. I've had discussions with Mike Morris. Eric and I have had discussions. I think it's time that we start looking for a place that is ours that we can at least, even if temporarily, we can rent. I agree that we should have some sort of hybrid from the beginning. I'm hopeful that as elected officials, we show up to more meetings in person than we do on Zoom. I understand that there's reasons for everyone to be able to have to like step away and not be able to come to the live meetings. However, I hope that hybrid is available to everyone. I mean, even when I went to Chicago, it was great to be able to Zoom into our meeting and have it, as bad as the internet was. But I agree that, I mean, the state is allowing for hybrid. We should also have some sort of hybrid model. But I would like us to start meeting in person sooner rather than later. And I think as a council, you guys need to have that discussion and figure out where and when we can get that started. I'm hopeful sometime in end of June, sometime July, that we're there. And that, again, we have hybrid is important. State's allowing it. We should allow our citizens to have every access they can to get to us. Some are not going to be comfortable coming to meetings. And depending on what the temporary space is, we may not have room for 100, 150 residents. So we have to be cautious of that. And short of that, that's all I got. Jennifer, anything else?
Yeah, I just, in case I am unable or miss the next meeting, I would like to make my suggestion on the pool, just so you can talk about it next time if this is something useful. I mean, every time I go to Hannaford or TJ Maxx, they say, hey, do you want to donate $1 to some cause or another? Or do you want to round up to the nearest dollar? As it was stated, if you guys raise the fee for non-resident and, keep the fee for the resident the same, people may want to make an additional donation. You can always ask that. I don't know if people pay by credit card, but you can always say, would you like to round up? And I think it must be successful. Otherwise, why would they keep doing it?
Great. Thank you, Jen. Eric, Thomas, you had something to say?
Just to Jen's point about we've been working steadily on both a temporary and a permanent solution for city council chambers. We met with somebody, I think a week and a half ago now, about a potential location to rent for a temporary location that I think may work out. Don't want to name names yet until we actually have a potential deal in place. But and then we're constantly looking at vacant buildings that are out there or potential sites to build a new building. But the city council is essentially homeless at the moment, and that's not acceptable long term. We need to figure out a permanent long-term solution for where we can have city council meetings that doesn't count on the whims of a landlord. So just want to reassure people that we are working on both a temporary solution so we can get back to meeting in person soon and a long-term solution.
Since we are homeless, does the Mid-Main Homeless Shelter have a room big enough for all of us? I'm going to try it.
For one night only.
For one night only? Well, great. Councilor Klepak.
Yeah, on this point, first of all, to Jen's comment, please just reiterating, raise your hand. There's a little icon down there. You used it earlier. You can use that at any point during a meeting. And I think Patty, the city clerk, is very good at noticing when people have their hands up and bringing them in for comment during the appropriate time. On the issue of remote hybrid or in-person meetings, I am strongly in favor of maintaining hybrid options. Personally, I have no problem with being on the computer and communicating. And I think that we ask a lot, for example, of our department heads to come to these meetings, sit around for 3 hours, 3.5 hours, going on 3.5 hours here. It's, in February at 10:30 at night, it's nice to be able to just walk home to your bed across the hall rather than having to drive from wherever you're going to be. And it does enable access for people that are differently abled. It increases access for parents of young children who may not readily be able to just leave them or want to bring them to the city council, et cetera, et cetera. There's a long list of reasons why I actually think having at least the option for remote council meetings is wise. So there's my 2 cents.
I agree with you, Clepa. I think that it's very important that we have some sort of hybrid model so that people can participate. Like I said, weather permitting. If weather isn't permitting, I know we've canceled council meetings because of weather. So, can we bring in Anna Holdner, please?
Anna, can you hear us?
I can.
Great, you are up.
Excellent. Well, I have 2 things. The first, I'd like to thank Rebecca Green, who was the latest council person to take me up on my invitation on behalf of the South End Neighborhood Association to give a neighborhood walking tour. Thank you. I am looking forward to being able to bring the rest of you around, or at least those who have not taken the tour yet. And then the second thing is the South End Neighborhood Association. We're doing a bike repair this Saturday from 10 to 3 down at Green Street Park. This is our second bike repair this year. We're working really hard trying to get through all the bikes that we have in order to be able to distribute and host our annual bike swap this year. We weren't able to do that last year, and it really was a blow to our community. So if you know how to fix a bike, if you know how to turn a wrench, a screwdriver, if you know how to pump up a tire, please reach out to me. Reach out to the South End Neighborhood Association through Facebook, or show up at Green Street Park at 10 o'clock, and we'd love to have you help out.
Anna, I'll be there again this weekend. We fixed a lot of bikes the last time we did it. A lot of them.
And we're even halfway through.
No, we're not. We only did about 35 bikes last time. There was only about 3 or 4 of us, and I'll take help from any of you. Rick, you got some wrenches. Clepak, you ride bikes. We need you. And anyone else who wants to attend.
I've got a bike to donate for parts.
We'll take that too.
Yeah, you can bring that to the South End Teen Center, or we can make arrangements and you can bring it to my house where they live in my backyard.
I used to work at a place called Back Alley Bikes, which was a bicycle co-op in the city of Detroit, started by a woman named Grace Lee Boggs, a great community organizer there. I love working on bikes.
Excellent. I personally do not know how to work on bikes. I am the more administrative side of things. I do the registration. So we could definitely use a hand. And if you can't make it in person, there are some folks who've reached out, and we can try to make arrangements to be able to set up another time to turn some wrenches, I guess is the saying.
There it goes. Anybody else? Anna, thank you.
Thank you.
We get a motion to adjourn? Anyone?
Yes.
I'd like to table that. Oh, wait a minute.
No.
What, table the adjournment?
Bullshit.
I learned more about the brown tails today than I ever thought I would. Thanks, Tom.
I just touched the tip of the iceberg. Jay.
Hey,
You wanted
stay
me to-
on it, Tom. Stay on it. They're
Bring some by
nasty
your house,
guys.
Jay.
Who was that?
But he's gonna bring some by your house.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sure I don't have to. I'm sure they're already there.
I got duct tape. I will duct tape him to the wall.
Have a good night, Joe.
Have a good one, everybody.
Have a good night.
Right.